now, we're likely 12,387,826. That's what we see around the world. It's also, again, looking at the United States with over 3 million cases now, 3.2 million cases, and they're opening schools. There's been an edict given by President Trump that schools are going to open when the summer is over, and they're coming towards the end of summer in about a month or so. But there's a lot of pushback and push, from state institutions. Like yesterday out of Florida, we saw the Miami-Dade schools saying that, they were not really sure what they were going to do because they're really worried that, opening of schools will lead to more spread. I mean, which is obvious. It's going to happen. But what Trump has said is that you don't open schools, we're going to cut the funding from the federal government to the school education system. So it's a threat. You open schools or you don't get any money. So, this is what we're looking at now. And, Dr. Fauci has said, look, we're dealing with unprecedented possibilities of infections here. We still have not reached our peak, excuse me, and we still see more and more cases every day. We have, 135,000 people dead and more dying. Younger people now is who is being looked at in the United States as those now who are being infected more than anybody else. People under the age of 35 now presenting with symptoms and actually being hospitalized. And what he's seeing is that could go all the way down to children of school-going age should they open schools. So that's a raging debate going on in the United States right now. And summer months are coming to an end. Yeah, they're going back to school in August,
this
according to Trump.
Elections are coming up. He's concerned about the economic slump. And he wants to get things moving again, but it doesn't make sense. I also noticed there was a couple of lawsuits filed by universities on account of cutting funding for all. Part of that edict is to deport or to withdraw the visa for foreign students.
Yes.
On the thinking that as long as they are studying remotely, they need to go back to their countries and study
remotely.
Hey. What is going on? Crazy just got crazier.
Yep.
Hey. I think I don't think Trump is actually doing anything that he hasn't done before. Remember, Trump for the longest time has not favored immigration, as in people migrating to his country. He has not favored it. It's open.
Even before he was president.
No pretense about it.
Yeah.
It is that is why many of these extremist white groups seem to have flourished enormously during his reign. It's like they were given a carte blanche. They were told, now, go ye forth. What we're seeing are details of the same thinking. Consider corona when it was first detected in the US and the things he said. He very personally and directly contributed to the problems that they currently have. Because he was in 159% denial, and he said, what? It's life as normal. By the time they were trying to now just accept the basic reality, they were now not just chasing after it. The thing was far gone. In many cases, they didn't even know it was. But what they were seeing was the effects of it. But remember, someone like Trump still has a very large following from his fellow Americans.
Yeah.
People who think that he is the right sort of leader for them.
Are you saying, though, Trump's followers do not regard children going back to schools as a risk?
Those are details that they don't even think of.
It doesn't come to there. It doesn't come to
that. To me, that doesn't make sense.
Remember,
first of all, you should ask: do they consider coronavirus a risk?
Actually,
everything else now has been answered.
And they will have an explanation for corona. They will have an explanation if somebody dies, and it'll have nothing to do with what the rest of the world seems to know.
Yeah.
He has a sister who wrote a book. She's a clinical psychologist. The White House has actually declared that book as a falsehood and a complete lie. And all she's doing is narrating the family issues and some of the things that could have affected Trump and made him the sort of person that he is.
So he has his own Malik problem.
He has his own unique Malik. Just that Malik has not written a book.
Yeah.
But his sister has written a book. And they just stopped short of banning the book in the US. They can't. But people are going to read it, and it's already being acclaimed by others as a very interesting story to read. It makes you understand very many things about the president.
Amazingly, this doesn't affect his voters. His supporters don't care.
No, his supporters don't really care. They remember, when people are suffering, it is often very, very difficult to understand why you're suffering when the narrative is that you come from a prosperous country. Prosperous means you should also be prosperous. But what is most irritating to such people is that black people or people of color are prospering. That is something they find unpalatable completely.
Yeah, I've been, I'm interested in education, and I was looking at something. They're talking about decolonizing education in the States. And there's a school of thought that's going as far as saying this education system is so broken, it needs to be dismantled, the same way we dismantled slavery. Because what they're saying is that the biases, the prejudices that allow racism to continue in America is ingrained in the entire school system, in the curriculum, in how they appoint teachers.
In the
and
funding.
System, the funding as well.
Yes.
And this might explain how you get these voters who are blind. They don't have, they're not able to critically review their candidate. So when we talk about Western education, we tend to think it's better. But I think America has shown us it's not just putting money in it. There's also the foundations of
the thing
education.
You must realize, if you look at the history of Europe, because that's where these white Americans came from, is that a lot of the things that we were to see, and we still see, people who are in the West who are predominantly white, and the hierarchy of individuals who actually want to remain in power, they practice these things among their own people for the longest time and got it right. So when they come to us, they're not experimenting.
They're living what they know.
They have figured out exactly what to do and how to do it. So this manipulation, whether it's through the educational system, whether it's through colonialism, it is something that was long practiced among their own. People forget that you talk of the UK, what a wonderful country it is. As we speak, not tomorrow, the day after, right now, okay? The Welsh are agitating for a certain autonomy. The Scots did that a long time ago. The Irish went to war about it. And that hasn't been quelled completely. So it's not as though that their colonialism started with us. Oh, no. It started with their own. To the point where people forget that even the Welsh have their own language. The Irish have their own language. The Scots have their own language.
Yeah.
Yes. I think in the UK, the one thing that's more progressive is that racism is spoken. There's an awareness of it, and there's a lot of sensitivity around it, and possibly it's because of what you're saying. They've had
it's better hidden.
They've had the devolution. They recognize Scots are different.
It's better hidden.
Well, racism is still there, but I think
quite formal.
I think the UK policies are more alive to it than what we're seeing in the States. That's what I would say. Because in the States, I think the kind of response we've gotten from, especially from the white, population, is they didn't know. These conversations don't happen out there. They didn't know. And now they're saying, well, it's there, but let us dismantle the education system. And, this panel was saying everything has to change.
Please remember that America was once a colony of Great Britain, just so that we understand this discussion well.
Yeah, but modern day Britain, I think can say is more.
I am actually agreeing with you.
More progressive in trying in recognizing, maybe because of their colonial past.
Thank you.
They've been forced to confront it.
That is actually the point I was going to make, because you can't be a colonialist and not interact with these colonies.
Yep.
So you'll have a greater advantage when it comes to dealing with people who are different from you. Yes.
Because you're used to it.
Yes. Eric, a very valid point.
UK, I think, has reflected more because they recognize, in a way, if you look at their psyche, they recognize more. It's unlike the States, where even the colonization, the way they treated the native American Indians is not something that's in the dominant.
My dear, that one is
discourse.
not the way they treated. They
The
had a
content.
policy of extermination. No,
Decimation
not,
completely.
not colonization.
It was-
Decimation.
Clear them
It was
completely.
remove them from here.
Yes, completely from the face of the earth.
Okay,
Right.
let's get
Yes.
into the weather. 16 minutes after 6. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Read the Standard newspaper with us just from your mobile device. Star 550 star 2 hash. Star 550 star 2 hash. Dial that on your mobile device. It'll send you a message. Open that message. You'll find a link. And the link gives you 3 options. You can either buy today's paper for 20 shillings. You can subscribe to the paper for an entire week or for an entire month. If you just go for today's newspaper for 20 shillings worth of your airtime, you'll be able to read today's Standard from page to page, from the beginning to the very end as it appears on hard copy. So basically what you're saying is we are selling you the Standard newspaper on digital platform for 20 bob only. Now, we'd like to give you 1,000 shillings worth of free Safaricom airtime. So download that, get that Standard newspaper, star 550 star 2 hash. Go to page 2 and wait for the question. Page 2, wait for the question. Good morning, it's 17 minutes after 6. Let's take a look at the weather.
All right, let's take a look at what Friday morning has in store today. 15 degrees in Nairobi this morning. It's drizzling in some parts of the city. Likelihood of seeing wet conditions through the day today with highs of 23 and lows of 11. In Njeri today at 14 degrees, it's cloudy. The rains will come down soon. At 22 degrees the high and lows of 11. In Nakuru at 13 degrees, partly cloudy conditions through most of the day with highs of 23. And in Eldoret, 12 degrees and partly cloudy. The heavens will open later into thunderstorms, highs of 21. And in Kisumu, 19 degrees and partly cloudy as well. 27 degrees the high with rain showers expected later. Taking a look into Kakamega, where thunderstorms will be the order of the day. 24 the high and lows of 15. In Malindi, it's partly cloudy at 25 degrees. We'll see highs of 28 and lows of 23. 24 degrees in Mombasa. Highs of 28 and lows of 23 with partly cloudy conditions. Let's step out of Kenya now into Kampala at 18 degrees. It's mostly cloudy. Thunderstorms expected for later with highs of 24 and lows of 18. It's 22 degrees and mostly cloudy in Dar es Salaam. Showers expected very soon with highs of 28 and lows of 22. In Johannesburg, it's partly cloudy at 7 degrees. We'll see highs of 18 and lows of 6. In Lagos, it's clear skies at 24 degrees currently. Showers expected soon, going into thunderstorms well into the weekend with highs of 28 and lows of 23. It is still Thursday night in New York. It's partly cloudy though at 26 degrees. Showers expected as the sun comes up. 31 degrees the high and lows of 23. In London, cloudy conditions at 14 degrees. Showers expected later with highs of 19 and lows of 11. And finally for now, in Paris, it's cloudy conditions in the city of love. Highs of 23 and lows of 12.
Twenty minutes after 6, it's the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's begin with today's proverb. City?
Today's proverb:
Yes.
when you show the moon to a child, they only see your finger. Let me repeat. When you show the moon to a child, they only see your finger. That is a Zambian saying.
That's a very interesting one.
Tafakari hayo.
How old is this child?
Oh, good Lord.
In other words,
The child is at
Toddler,
the age.
like-
The child is at the age where you can call them baby.
Daddy.
in other words, you're
See?
everything to them.
See moon.
Is this
Okay.
Is it true? Is it accurate anyway?
What? The
But-
one you show?
Well, yeah. So that you're everything to that child.
I can imagine.
Oh yes.
1 week, 2 months.
But you're the first
old
person
child.
they have seen or known.
So you're
Look at the way a child is
there
touched with
you
the mother. That's the person. Fathers are there, yes, but usually like they're a foreign country. This is the mother that they see every day, they talk to. They are attached to this person more than anybody else.
Right. I mean, they're carried, then their sustenance is derived from this person.
This person.
They're carried. The nurturing aspect comes from this person.
Yes.
So I mean,
This person's everything.
yeah.
So if we
So
are
where is the
to-
mother story coming into this proverb?
that's
Because
You guys have lost me.
because it was brought in.
You've lost me.
It is
So
Friday
if I showed
interpretation.
my child the moon, they'll see the mother.
We were talking about the initial stages
Sorry.
of how
Don't be
the
annoyed.
attachment. No. He's not annoyed. The attachment to a parent becomes, and I thought I would just bring in the mother to extrapolate what we're saying.
I'd like to apply it to the discussion we were having before on politics. It's the same way that these kind of rabid or fundamentalist followers of Donald Trump or whichever other demagogue do not see beyond. They don't see that's the
They just
reality.
see their
they
person.
just see
Just
their
see
Actually,
person.
they cannot afford
They're
to.
behaving.
You just see Baba.
Yeah,
They cannot
politically
afford-
So
immature.
if you're reading the standard newspaper, star 550 star 2 hash for just 20 bob, go to page 2. There's a story here, and I'd like you to tell us the headline of the story. It'll now be an offense for police officers and civilian staff working in President Uhuru Kenyatta's security detail and State House to chew mogoka or miraa. Civilian staff working or residing within State House or any of the presidential escort camps will also face disciplinary action should they be found chewing the stimulant. Officers serving retired President Mwai Kibaki either at his Njeri home or Nairobi home are also affected by this directive. The order was issued by the head of the president's escort team, Josephat Keremi, who said chewing miraa had health challenges to officers and their families. The officers heading police camps, where officers from the GSU Recce unit who guard the president, have been instructed to take action on anyone flouting the directive. No more miraa or mogoka.
That you need a directive means the habit is very pervasive. You need to be thinking about what are the work conditions of these people.
They work at night.
Yeah, but many people work at
Just
night.
sitting
They
there,
don't chew miraa
Not going anywhere.
habitually.
And you need to stay awake.
You need to be alert.
You need to be alert. So, what is the headline of this story? It's on page 2 of the Standard. It will now be an offense for police officers and civilian staff working in President Uhuru Kenyatta's security detail and State House to chew mogoka or miraa. 0719 012 600 for a chance to win 1,000 shillings worth of Safaricom airtime.
So both of these anyway are legal. You can chew
Yeah.
them anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So that means if I'm a
If you're a
regular
civilian.
police,
Yeah, if
I
you're-
can chew.
Even you, as you are Wanjiro, if
I
you want
can
to chew miraa,
Oh,
please
yes.
carry on.
But it means it's only the presidential.
It's just these people who are working for in the presidential Recce security detail. Those working for President, State House, and former President Mwai Kibaki.
And when because when they're off duty,
They have been told, do not chew.
okay, so they're going to monitor them even when they're off duty.
You see, that's where they live. So the people who guard the estate where they live in Parklands have also been told,
It's a very
observe,
interesting.
take action.
Okay,
We need a bit of discipline here.
okay.
Okay.
This
Nothing is going
mirror
to be
thing
boiled
is-
and drunk.
It's a bit that we
Yeah.
shouldn't chew it.
The
We'll
thing
find
is
a way.
chew.
Chew is
Oh,
what they said.
I see. No, not about imbibing.
Yeah. Not consumption.
Yes.
Before we move to another story, I've got another one here that I'd like just to share. It's still on the same page of the Standard, page 2. Outcry on the county's 4.1 million shillings for coffins. This is Migori Governor Okoth Obado's administration, which is coming under fire because they've set aside 4.1 million shillings for coffins in the 2020-2021 financial year. Residents are claiming that the allocation is suspicious and it will cause panic as the country grapples with the soaring cases of COVID-19. The allocation has already gone through the county assembly and it has already been passed. Some residents are saying that this allocation was ill-founded because families have been taking care of their relatives' funerals anyway without any financial support from the county government. So the question we are asking, it says, is how many coffins they are planning to buy with that amount and how many deaths they have projected. This is an MCA who sought anonymity.
Yeah.
Would you say,
what's the
though,
incidence?
Would you say, though, that this is, setting aside money and saying, Governor Mutua told us they already have allocated. If in case we get to a point where we need to do mass graves, we have set aside a piece of land. So the next thing that goes is you also set aside money for a coffin.
What's the incidence of Migori in terms of infections.
So far.
Yes, because I mean, this projection must be informed by something. Either that, or it's a tendering, an opportunity to tender.
You know, if you're talking about
This is
the
it.
But you
amounts
see,
of money involved, even, well, with reference to the counties, 4 million, that is not considered a huge sum.
It's a small amount.
Yes, it is. It is a huge sum in itself, in and of itself, but in terms of what is allocated for these things, essentially what you're saying is if you actually use the 4 million, then you are injecting into that particular industry. Because remember, funerals are an industry. This is the thing that you must remember in some parts of the world. It's just that COVID has gotten in the way now.
I think from just reading that story, is the county government preparing itself for the worst case scenario. And you don't want to get to a point where you're thinking, okay, we had only prepared ourselves for 100 coffins, and then you get to a point where you have 200. So it's an allocation. It doesn't have to be consumed, and you cannot really inflate the number of deaths. The number of deaths will be known. We had this X number of deaths, and therefore X number of coffins. Maybe it's also the other thing of a community hearing coffins have been set aside, the message that it sends to the entire community. You know, it's like having a coffin manufacturer in your neighborhood. People start thinking, hey,
Are people dying?
no, yeah, why we don't need this one here? Or somebody says, you know, me, I make coffins at a family gathering,
Do you know something we don't know?
taking the boy home.
Right.
So what do? I sell coffins.
Yeah.
What do you expect your dad is going to react?
Bit of a morbid career, isn't it, son?
We also don't confront death.
Yeah,
So
it's how we deal with death
yeah.
as a society. One more story before we look at the traffic.
Sure. Health CS risks civil jail for attempting to transfer 2 officers under him. This is the story in the Nation. Mutahi Kagwe could be jailed for trying to transfer 2 senior officers of an agency under his ministry after a Nairobi court yesterday found him guilty of contempt. The ruling by Justice Onesmus Macau marks a significant escalation in the tussle between Kagwe and 2 senior-most officers, of the National Quality Control Laboratory, Dr. Hezekiah Chepkwony and Dr. Pius Wanjala, whom he sought to transfer. According to Justice Macau, the Honorable Cabinet Secretary, Mr. Mutahi Kagwe, is hereby cited for contempt of this court's judgment decree dated January 31st, 2020, for his decision contained in the letter, etc., deploying Dr. Chepkwony and from the National Quality Control Laboratory to the Kenya Medical Training College. And this was what Justice Macau said. He had been summoned to appear before the judge virtually, either personally or through his lawyer, on the 23rd of July for mitigation and sentencing. The court has declared invalid the transfer letters, sending them to KMTC and the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital.
Okay. So it's an employment dispute here.
Yes, it is.
And then the CS, for some reason, has not yet effected some court order.
Yeah.
Okay.
He refused to show up.
Okay.
Just giving, rise to the tussles that continue within the ministry there.
It sounds like the minister, the CS is struggling to take charge.
Take control, yeah.
Yeah, to be able to drive through whatever he wants. Where is the right thing? This agency is what? Is it independent? Is it a...
No, it's under the ministry.
It's under, is it a,
It's under the
department?
ministry.
It's under the Ministry of Health.
It's a department? Why would he not be able to...
But they have
effect a
autonomy
transfer?
because there's a board, right?
Because there's a board. If there's a board, doesn't that make
And
it a
there's
state...
management and there's procedure.
It doesn't make it a state-owned...
It is
Something?
state-owned,
But still
Yes.
a process that you must
but
follow.
everything must go through the board.
Yeah. If it's state-owned, it's semi-autonomous.
Yes, the minister can say, this is what I'd like, but the procedure is it must go through the board.
The discussion we're having yesterday about these semi-autonomous agencies.
It's the procedure followed and all.
That's what the problem is usually.
Solicitor General has his job cut out. Maybe they're just playing this cat and mouse game. Push.
Or remember, there's what you call tradition, and some of these things have never been challenged before.
Yeah.
So they are told, Mheshimiwa hii, simply do this. Now someone has decided, no. I'm not budging. I'm taking this matter to court.
Tutapelekana, tutapambana, tutakanyangana. 6:30. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a look at traffic, what's happening on the roads, and then we continue looking at more newspaper headlines this morning in both the Standard and the Nation. Good morning.
All right, what does Friday morning have in store? Comarak Road to Outer Ring and Long Dandora flowing very smoothly then in whatever direction you're seeking to go. From Roy Sambo to Globe Cinema Roundabout on Thika Road, absolutely no traffic whatsoever. We do know, however, that will change between the hours of 7:30 and 9 o'clock. But for now, if you wanted to get off Thika Road, it is the time to do it. Namanga Road at Kitengela traffic moving very well, then on towards Mombasa Road. Not much of a hold up at all right now. Last couple of days it's been very good on Mombasa Road. Hopefully it continues this Friday. Outbound on Thika Road, quite it's adding up this morning. Interestingly enough, now that the roadblocks have been opened, not much traffic leaving the city. All right, that's what it looks like for now. We'll take a look at it later. If anything happens or pops up in your neck of the woods, do let us know. Spice FM KE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter.
It's a Situation Room, in the room. My name is Latiff. We have CT Muga, Nduh Okoh, and Njeri Thorne taking a look at the headlines. Njeri, what do you have? What are you looking at? You're even underlining.
Yes, I'm underlining because it's a page 3 story. Big screen goes out at the IMAX 20th century, and essentially. They're saying that things have gotten nasty. Auctioneers have been called in. There's been a public notice issued to auction off all the various things, the speakers, the projectors, and everything. And the story then goes on to say that the cinema industry has suffered because of COVID restrictions, and they have about 4.5 million rent arrears.
For just 3 months.
For just 3 months, so they say. But, the article then goes on to reflect that movie going has suffered overall because of streaming services that are available.
Yeah.
And that IMAX 20th Century is the last surviving of the pioneer movie theaters. And then there are some very sentimental, bits there. That my first date was at the movies. I was so smitten that at the end of the movie, I ended up kissing this guy. It was my first kiss.
Experience.
Is this personal reflection?
Oh, you're pretending to read the paper.
Maybe I'm resonating.
Oh, okay.
Do they tell you what movie it was they saw?
Yes, Waiting to Exhale. So definitely not me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought it was
had to
Love Brood in
clarify.
the African
Yeah,
part.
the timeline doesn't quite work. Right. So, my reflection, of course, is this is effects of COVID in terms of businesses. But then also it's about changing tastes of the market. But the article also points out that new malls are also setting up movie theaters.
Yes.
So what's not working? What's not gelling here?
I think it needs to go deeper into looking at Stevens Mwenda, who's writing the story, ought to maybe take some time now and go into studying what's been happening in the movie industry for the last X number of years. If you think about this particular one that we're talking about, the IMAX 20th Century, these are new guys who came and they invested heavily into this particular theater. And they've gone into others as well, at Garden City and the other IMAX areas. Yes, the older movie theaters as we knew them, the Shan cinemas and the Odeons and the Nairobis and Kenya cinemas, And which other?
Well, no, I'm saying many of them became churches.
Yes,
They've
actually they
all
say that.
converted into basically just churches. And then now you have new movie theaters coming up in the new
And people
malls.
do attend. People actually go to watch movies.
Yeah, especially the big blockbusters when there's a
Yes.
launch. But is there like a sustained,
Yes.
I don't.
habit
There
of,
must
of
be
movie
something.
watching?
There might be something we don't know about the ownership pattern in the new malls.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense. Either that or people on the outskirts are watching more movies and people don't want to come into the CBD. Yeah, like you say, Stevens Mwendo would do well to do a bit more research, get a few more testimonials about people and their experiences of the movies.
Yeah.
City
And maybe even
or
talk to these
experience
guys
of the
who are
movies, of
the
the flicks.
the managers.
We used to call them
The
flicks.
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 In those days, you're allowed to smoke.
The cinemas. And there used to be a very long break in the middle of a movie.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
The intermission.
I forgot
The only
that.
thing is, if you made the
Those tiring
mistake
things.
and didn't read correctly, because you'd see the poster, and you didn't understand that on certain days they showed Indian movies. Like me, you would walk into the movie and you wonder,
With your dates.
this showing shortly is a bit long. Then you realize the break has arrived and you're saying, okay, maybe the movie is coming up.
This wasn't a promo for an upcoming
And
movie. It
then
was
the
a trailer.
the Indian movie continued.
And you're in there.
You're in there and you paid.
And you finished the
So now you
juice.
decided, no, I'm persevering. I paid for this thing.
I will by force.
No.
This
no,
is how
no.
we build character and resilience, man.
Yes.
You sit
I
through
paid.
the Indian movie.
I'm watching this thing.
You just missed the poster.
It's next to the one you wanted to watch, and you're wondering, when is this thing coming? Hey, well, these commercials are long today.
Yes, you do. Wow.
So,
Eh.
it gave me a taste of Indian movies, and I actually got to like them. Understood nothing. But the truth of the matter is, they were dancing most of the
There was
time.
a dance.
Yes, and even before a fight, there's a song. Okay?
And then you'd follow the story.
Yes, and then the soundtrack that followed the punches are the ones I really liked. It was like someone was hitting some empty Kimbo tail. I wonder what sort of punch is this? Yes, so
Fridays I'll be here always.
so that was movie watching. Yes.
Now that has been, according to this story, that is increasingly being replaced by, watching movies at home.
Yeah.
All these streaming services, Netflix, HBO, Roku, Hulu, Amazon Fire TV, and Amazon Prime, all of them basically, there's a certain demographic that they're attracting. That, people are just, you want to watch.
demographic is this?
You want to watch a movie, you just sit at home and watch your Netflix.
I'm a big streamer. Yep.
You're a huge streamer,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah,
You
yeah.
say-
I'm a Netflix fan. Like
there you
anything, like anything.
There you go.
And YouTube. YouTube is my life.
YouTube and Netflix.
Yes. Yes. YouTube, I do a lot of YouTube. I do the TED Talks. I do, like this decolonizing education thing.
You're
I
following
do
it
my
all on YouTube.
fitness. YouTube. And my mom, I'm really impressed. She's 80 years old, not very tech savvy. She's now also discovered YouTube.
Bas.
So she does her services. She's also now doing some of her exercises. She's got a few sites she goes to. So which demographic are they talking about? That's the point I was making.
Like you.
Yes, and the younger, I think.
Those who
you know.
feel that going to the movies is now not their kind of thing.
There's something about the big screen, huh? And that surround.
The surround sound.
If before you get accustomed to just the effectiveness of surround, you can find yourself ducking.
And now there's 3D. You wear the glasses and the
Yes,
guys
no.
punching
That
you in
one,
the face.
Yes, exactly. That one actually now confuses the mind completely.
It's a total experience.
I remember watching this movie of Pearl Harbor, and you see the plane heading towards you.
Yeah. In fact, I think movie going has become, has kind of been upgraded, because I know the last
Now it's an
movie
experience. It's
an
not just
experience.
sitting
Yes,
down
yes,
to.
yes.
Well, it
You
was still an
psych
experience
up.
even then. The
Yeah.
whole idea of planning for the date and how you're gonna meet.
And then popcorn.
And there was no
Popcorn.
mobile
Yeah.
phones.
Yeah.
I will wait for you out there.
Yeah,
Until
because-
you show up. Remember,
because-
the movie is starting at 4. let's meet at 3.
And she comes.
Yes.
She comes with 3 friends.
Yes.
Jipange.
Where?
And you'd already bought just the one ticket for her.
And you only had bus fare.
Yeah.
Popcorn and bus fare.
A whole experience.
For real, it's an experience.
It was an experience.
The
Not-
last
not to
movie
be
I watched
trifled.
on the big screen was Black Panther. And, it was like rally the troops.
Yeah, everybody was going to watch
everyone,
this.
yeah.
So yeah, they still
So
make
it's an
money for
experience.
such kind of things. Yes,
Yeah.
there's a culture around it. So you're going to watch Wakanda. There's people who are coming up dressed in.
Yeah. Or in the...
It was-
But Eric,
it was a whole thing.
Consider, if you're talking about a business that makes money, it isn't possible for movie theaters to be full every day.
Yeah.
Just like it isn't possible for hotels to be full every day.
Yeah.
So they do their maths and they figure when you have a blockbuster, this is what you need
Meal
to sustain
kits.
the business.
Meal
Yes.
kits.
Yes.
And then they have special rates for students.
For students during the week. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's a big clientele. But this is the changing business trends, but also the effect of COVID on businesses.
So we still talk about livelihoods then, and the report that was released yesterday by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics on the impact of COVID-19. It says millions of Kenyans cannot pay rent, buy food as the virus fever rises, according to this new survey. When it comes to food, 4 in 5 households have experienced an increase in the cost of food, with 78.1% saying they have food reserves. Loan repayments, nearly a quarter of those with loans have successfully renegotiated repayment terms. 2 in 5 households have cut back on buying non-essential items. And 36.7% do not need to put in any measures when it comes to rent. And that's where our big one is more than 3 in 10 Kenyans, that's 37%, are unable to pay their rent in May, with the majority citing reduced earnings. And then the story, as it gives that perspective, it also now talks to the landlords. And the number of Kenyan households unable to pay rent in May rose 7%, with a majority of landlords refusing to offer relief, according to this government survey. And the landlords are saying, we have loans to repay as well. We have loans to repay, so we expect some money to come. The overall part of this story is that landlords, a majority of the landlords have not extended any kind of relief to their tenants.
Because they're not getting any relief themselves. There was a suggestion or they were implored.
Yep.
Which
Nothing
isn't
ever
enough.
came to support them.
Which isn't enough.
No.
There's a whole issue of, well, if you've got loans, then you can go and renegotiate your repayment terms. And we're seeing that 25%, at least a quarter of those that have gone, have successfully renegotiated the repayment terms. But there's more. This is your source of livelihood. This is where you earn your income, and you also have loans to pay. And even if you delay this loan, you still know that you will end up paying. So maybe even the bank is telling you, okay, so what we're going to do is we can stagger your repayments. You can reduce the installment that you're paying.
But you have to
But
pay
you
something.
have to pay something. So, and that something must come from your tenant.
And the landlord could also be affected by a layoff.
Yep.
So, some landlords could just be insensitive, but
there's-
imagine they're also affected
There is
financially.
this reality, and that both the banks and the landlords must face. When you have such a situation, because I'm saying this because I have a friend who is a serious landlord. Even before COVID, people already
Serious
beginning to-
landlord means many units.
Yes, not one house. Okay,
Serious.
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 Him
So
is
serious.
Several
Those
several
Kenyanese.
blocks of flats, not one block. Something like
Several.
around 10 blocks of flats. Okay?
Right.
And even before COVID, there was an economic strain. COVID simply exacerbated it. He was reducing his rent. And I remember asking him why. He says, look, I don't have a debt on these. Now, you see, that's the thing. He didn't have a debt.
Yep.
Okay? He says, so if this person moves, I'm not sure of the person I'm going to get next. So you negotiate and find out what it is that they're comfortable paying. And you say, it is okay. Then what you do, you realize, let me just reduce rent for everybody. Okay?
At least they pay. The income comes
That's
in.
the point, because you told me the alternative is you have empty,
You have
units,
empty units.
and then that one, you have no income at all.
Zero income.
You see, he's
For
a
him, it
businessman.
works well.
He's a businessman
And
as
also he
well.
has the numbers. So even 10,000 per unit will still give him something.
Yeah.
Yes, he had done his maths.
If you have one unit
Yes.
And you're
or
dependent
two,
on that.
and you're depending on that as your source of income, and you still have debts to pay.
Exactly.
Then now,
You see,
You're not a business, it's your source of livelihood as
but,
well.
but also
Yep.
maybe you have a debt with the bank. Now, this is
Yep.
where you need to go negotiate with the bank and say, look, my tenant is able to pay this.
I'll give you.
And this is your debt. This is what I owe you.
yeah,
And you negotiate with that reality, because the alternative is the bank will get nothing.
yep,
We're actually going back to the discussion we had earlier about government has to wake up and be alive to the impact of livelihood on livelihoods. It's not yet hit.
yeah, and address such issues directly, because the government is not addressing the issue of the basics: food, shelter, clothing directly. It has not addressed food.
Eric,
it has
remember-
just talked about
Recall, we've had
feeding
this
people.
discussion, and the one thing that became clear is that the government is accustomed to talking at problems and talking about problems. COVID has forced them to think about actually doing something about it. It's something they're not accustomed to.
And also, Kenyans always dissort.
They do.
They're used
But
to,
with-
we'll say talk, and Kenyans
you
will
fi-
figure
you
it
figure
out.
out what to
Figure it
do.
out
But
what you need to
COVID
do.
makes it impossible to.
Yeah. So now here you need your government to act.
Yes.
It's a 6:45. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's remind you about this portal by Kenya Ports Authority, which is an information portal. It's Captain Cargo, Kargo.
It is. And so there's a lot of stuff before, like we said, it just seemed like an entire giant to be able to deal with KPA. And so how do you get your stuff? Can I go there as an individual? Who must I use? So I guess it's a reestablishment of KPA's, commitment to make sure that the process is easy. So, I mean, the standards that we'll be looking at today that they promise to you. And through this portal, you'll be able to know that you have, interesting as they say, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week port services, except on the 1st of May, which is Labor Day, and the 25th of December, which is Christmas Day. So you'll be able to know who is available for you at the port. You will be able to know how you can identify these individuals. You can request for somebody to identify themselves so that you know who it is that you're working with. And they provide services in a safe working environment. So we know this off the bat that it's a re-establishment of their commitment through this portal, and to let people know that this thing that seemed so confusing before, we're trying to break it down and make it easier for you to navigate the waters. No pun intended, but okay. That's what we're looking at now with KPA.
More coming out. Remember, you can access this portal on kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo. All right, so we continue with taking a look at newspaper headlines, interesting stories in the papers. Another one, Nduh?
Yes, so the court declines to stop Ngilu ouster motion. Subheadline there is, Governor had told the judge that her rights were being trampled upon. Kitui Governor Charity Ngilu will face her accusers at the County Assembly after the High Court declined to stop her impeachment. Justice Weldon Korir yesterday dismissed a petition by Mrs. Ngilu challenging the impeachment motion filed by the Assembly Majority Leader Peter Kilonzo, effectively vacating the conservancy orders he granted last week. The judge said the petition lacked merit, adding that the threshold of public participation, you might like that one, Jiro, as enshrined in the Constitution, can only be determined by the Senate. And I quote Justice Korir, the allegation by the applicant that the impeachment is in bad faith will also be addressed by the Senate. He added that though courts are mandated to intervene in a process where there is denial or violation of a right or freedom, it should only engage its powers where there is an imminent threat to the Constitution. Impeachment is a tool used to oversee the county executive, and the Assembly is carrying out its constitutional mandate. by debating the motion. So, Ngili will face her day before.
The assembly.
The season.
The
It's a
assembly.
season.
Yep.
In fact, I'm reflecting that we missed the boat as citizens. We should have been recalling the MPs and governor, MPs and MCAs we don't like.
Senators.
Yeah, and senators that we don't like. It's the season.
It's time.
Let her put her case.
This time, 2022 is just around the corner.
We can start now, eh?
The thing is, once you have a precedent and you can see where it goes, remember, a lot of the actions of the citizenry have to do with the historical experiences, the lived experience. And so they may not say it, but they figure, no, I'm not going this route because from what I've seen in the past, it tends to end up that way. See, for the longest time, people didn't want to go to court because they figured, we know it's going to end.
That's true.
You see, now they've realized the court is showing some independence. So, hey, we've become litigious. People go to court.
It's good.
And Omtata has become an icon.
I tell you.
Totally.
Completely.
Totally.
Completely. With him, it's a total and complete. As we take a look at other headlines, remember we are giving away 1,000 shillings worth of Safaricom airtime by you reading the Standard on your mobile device, *550*2#. There's a story on page 2 of the Standard this morning. It'll now be an offence for police officers and civilian staff working in President Uhuru Kenyatta's security detail and State House to chew mogoka or miraa. What's the headline of that story? It's basically saying that they have been told, listen, you are no longer going to be allowed to chew these things because it's a stimulant and it's not good for your alert levels. This is also affecting officers who guard the former President Mwai Kibaki at home, Njeri home or Nairobi home.
Okay, I thought it was a stimulant. I know health, yes, but I thought it would help in terms of them being alert.
Yeah. Now that alert level goes to another level.
Hypersensitive.
Yes.
Shoot on
You
sight.
You see things, you see the moon, you see a finger, you see the
See
moon.
the moon. Hey, Eric Latiff.
Wow.
0719-012-600. You've got about 10 minutes to call in and win that 1,000 shillings worth of free Safaricom airtime. Another interesting story in the newspapers this morning.
Yes. So, scandal. You know how I like scandal. But can we stop sample collection as scandal? In testing exposed, private hospitals are charging patients and sending samples to the institute for free tests.
Wow.
CT, raise your eyebrows just a little higher. The Kenya Medical Research Institute, KEMRI, will no longer collect COVID-19 samples for testing, but will instead test samples from designated testing centers in the country. The institute has not been charging for the tests, and some private hospitals have taken advantage of this to exploit clients. I mean, for crying out loud.
Really?
Okay, anyway.
Which ones are these?
After charging as much as 15,000 shillings for a COVID-19 test, they send the samples to KEMRI for testing for free. We would like to notify the public that KEMRI will not be handling sample collection for COVID-19 testing. However, the institute will continue to discharge its national duty of conducting the COVID-19 sample testing in all our designated labs countrywide, according to KEMRI Director General Njeri Thorne. In a statement yesterday, he instructed centers with samples to be collected to make a formal request to the institute so that necessary arrangements could be made to dispatch teams to collect them. As our conversation was going on yesterday, interesting on social media, that we heard that people were sending in messages saying, I go to Kenyatta National Hospital, not even just private hospitals, and I'm charged 5,000 shillings to get the results of my test, whatever it may be. Another gentleman who's an Uber driver sent in a message yesterday, and he said, you know what? I had received a request. We picked up somebody and she said she was having symptoms and she wanted to go to hospital, but we had to divert first, go somewhere else to collect the money because they had been told if you're coming to get a COVID test, you needed to have at least 7,000 shillings. But now what we're hearing is that...
Where were they going?
Sorry?
Where did he take her?
He took her to Bagathi.
Oh,
To Bagathi.
Yes.
so Bagathi was...
So Bagathi was charging.
Yes.
7,000,
Bagathi was charging.
Yeah.
according to them.
According to them. This is what they knew, that they were going and they needed 7,000 for the test. According to this report in the paper, private hospitals then are collecting their samples, sending them to KEMRI, which KEMRI is testing for free. However, they're charging individuals up to 15,000 shillings per test.
Profiteering of...
Scandal.
Totally.
Scandal.
Big one. Big one.
Censure is due. Now, who would censure these people? Is it the ministry? Is it the board?
All this just comes, with information. You fight it. If the Mutahi Kagwe keeps and Rashid and Mwangangi keep every time they say, remember, COVID testing is free in government facilities.
Yeah.
Every day. So you just know it's government facility, it should be free.
If someone asks you, say, but we have been told it
That
is
it
free.
is free. I
In
shouldn't have to
government
pay for
facilities.
this.
In government facilities.
Yes, so why are you asking me to pay? But government facilities also tend to have some of the largest capacities for testing.
Yeah.
That's just the truth.
Yep.
So what you're saying is that people have been advised. It's up to them to either go to government facilities
No, but
or
if the
pay. But
inform-
this is an issue of profiteering, isn't
Right,
it?
it is.
Yeah.
But if the issue is out there,
very
that you know-
unethical.
it is absolutely.
Yeah.
But if it's out there and you know, for example, that it has been announced public, just like we had the issue before where quarantine you were charged a certain amount, and then we heard the announcement from government that it was free. Should you then present yourself for quarantine at an institution or whatever, and they ask you to pay, we have been told that this thing is free. Same thing for this. I came to get a COVID test in a public facility. Nobody should demand any money from you.
Yes, but I think the scandal is not that the hospitals are charging, it's that they are getting the service free and they are profiteering. That's the scandal.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because-
it's combined.
That's it.
I,
What's the
I may
difference?
choose to go to a private hospital why it's more convenient. Why should they charge me 15,000?
Or
and
if
then
they take the same
Yes,
Samples
yes,
to
yes.
Kemri.
The same samples
Yeah,
to
yeah.
You know,
Kemri and they're not
but
charged.
They could do-
most people, until this thing was unearthed, did not know
They
that
didn't
was
know.
what was happening.
They didn't know.
Your sample is
Yeah.
taken in a private hospital, you assume
That they're the ones
that's
who
what
actually are
doing it.
running
Yeah,
down.
you don't know they're taking
So
it
can
to
you
Kemri.
imagine you sit on the board of Nairobi Hospital and, okay, let me not say Nairobi, whichever private hospital, and they are doing this, they are profiteering. That is very unethical. You can charge 2,000, 3,000, which you say maybe is the handling or your costs, but why would you profiteer off a pandemic when you know government...
But
why
if you go
would
to any
profiteer?
private hospital, there'll be a trend you will notice over the years. Even if you present yourself at the emergency, they will always seek to keep you overnight. Standard.
Observation.
Observation. Standard.
Which hospital do you go to?
Standard.
I said private hospital. Any.
Like, really?
Any.
Depends on your condition, Bana.
I mean, I think that...
I'm talking
I'm
about
not
you're
with you.
walking, talking, you haven't
I
walked
am
yourself
not
there.
with
Or
you.
you've driven yourself there.
I am not which private. You know,
Any.
there are many levels of private hospitals.
City has a bone here.
I see something personal.
not.
Just
I'm-
tell us what happened.
No, I'm actually,
Siti.
no, it's not that. I am talking about a practice that is seen in our hospitals.
It's common.
It's common. It's
Pe-
not.
People complain about that many times.
It's not. It's not
That
just.
either you'll be told, we need to detain you, keep you here for the night so we can
It's observation, as they call it.
observe. And then also when it comes to dispensing of the medicine, the prescription is
You'd
going to be
think
2 pages.
you'd think they're giving you a donation to go and open a pharmacy. It's a whole slew of medication.
Can I tell you the flip side of that is we are not discerning patients.
We don't know.
We don't know, and we
It's
don't
not even discerning.
ask.
We don't know.
We
Even if
don't
you
know,
ask.
and we don't ask. How many people do you know who maybe have some condition? You ask them, so what are you suffering from? They say, I don't know. They told me blah, blah, blah. And you realize if you are, we are customers and the doctor is giving you a service. If you don't ask the right questions, this doctor will give you whatever. So
Even if you ask.
So actually there is a push to get more.
It's more information. We are coming to the top of the hour.
Yeah, more enlightened.
Okay. CT, today's finger.
Today's proverb, Eric. I am aware of when you show the moon to a child, they only see your finger.
City don't digress.
This is from Zambia, he said.
This is from Zambia.
Keep it right here. The conversation continues. In the next hour, we talk about, we ask the questions, where is the money going? Good morning, 7 o'clock.
All right. It looks great great on Gong Road. The road has been completed. Traffic is flowing smoothly. Everybody is driving with a smile on their face. It's great. We hope it doesn't turn into any traffic clogged situations. Mombasa Road also is looking pretty good for Friday morning. We'll see how that opens up in about an hour or so. It's looking really good, guys. Let's just keep it that way for now. If you do get stuck anywhere, do let us know. But for now, it looks absolutely fantastic. Let's see how many more adjectives I can use to describe traffic this morning. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. Let us know what you see if you get stuck somewhere. We'll take a look at Thika Road in a while, but if you're leaving now, you should be all right. We'll see everywhere else in just a bit and hope that nobody gets stuck for too long this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation
It's
Room.
2 minutes after 7
political,
o'clock, and thank you very much for tuning in to The Situation Room this morning on Spice FM. Remember, we live stream the show on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. In the room this morning is also Njeri Thorne of the Institute for Social Accountability, and she has a riddle for us today.
Yes, Eric. When I am outside, I am safe. When I go inside, I am no longer safe. When I am outside, I am safe. When I go inside, I am no longer safe. And I'll give a hint.
Yes, please.
It has to do with COVID, recent COVID guidelines. Something like that. Recent COVID guidelines.
When I am outside,
I am safe.
when I'm inside, I am
I
no
am
longer safe.
Has to do with actually very recent developments of the week.
I really wish...
Developments of the week.
Developments of the
Globally
week
or in the country?
in the country.
Man,
Those are two hints.
I'm wishing the hint.
Hey.
the
News
hint
hound,
had
you're
been-
getting too many hints out of me. Yeah.
Hey, if you can get the answer to this also, you can help us 0719012600 or on our social media handles, Spice FM KE on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. Just help us to understand this. Now, just before we introduce today's topic, remember what we were talking about movies, eh? So Hamisi Oluhanda tweeted this as his contribution. You guys have brought tears to my eyes. I once invited my chick for a movie afternoon date way back in 1998. Well, she came with her two uninvited and unbudgeted for friends. To cut a long story short, I ended up walking from town all the way to Embakasi village.
Oh, no.
He
From
put
7,
a brave
got
face.
there at 10 p.m.
You weren't alone.
Hamisi, I'm very sorry.
The privilege,
Boy shout stories.
Yes.
These are the ones.
the privilege of gender.
These
Hello.
are the ones uninvited and unbudgeted for. He has to make sure that he included those two.
Yes.
Came
Otherwise-
with two uninvited and budgeted for friends.
Otherwise, you'd have lost face.
Your 1 month's allowance, gone.
Gone.
Can you imagine?
Transport.
Gone.
He walked home.
On top of film.
Everything, as in he just decided, okay, now let me just walk home. It's better for me to do that.
The only saving grace is that security was better in those days. So that was an option.
Even if it was not, can you imagine an angry man
He
who has
had
spent
no
all his
option.
money
Yeah, he had no
on
option.
top of watching film? there's no which danger will come his way.
Can
He's
you-
the danger.
Did he enjoy the movie?
What movie? You
What-
can't-
I didn't watch anything.
Do you
Did
even
watch
see
it?
the movie?
His mind must have been calculating.
Look, if there was anything about the movie that he remembered, he would have written here. Hamisi,
Hamisi
do you
did
even
not
remember the
movie.
title of this movie?
No.
He does not.
He was
only
doing
remembers
mental maths.
the year, he remembers the month, he remembers the day, he remembers the time,
And the time he got
and he
home,
remembers the girl,
And remember the time
her
you got
two
home.
friends.
and the time he got home. The movie who was starring, the storyline.
You and your story.
alikuwa anafanya hesabu. Tu, 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 tu.
You know the story. Okay, Wajiro, just introduce us to the next topic.
Yes. So the question we have today is, where is the COVID money going? And the reason this topic is pertinent is because, like I said earlier, as we all know, the Eurobond billions came in, and the Auditor General then flagged 215 billion as unaccounted for. And as you remember, when we were speaking to Wangari Mwekia, she mentioned to us that there is a gap in terms of tracking COVID expenditure. We therefore felt it's important for us to raise this question, as government has been borrowing. It has gotten 78 billion shillings from the IMF, 108 billion shillings from the World Bank, 22 billion shillings from the African Development Bank for COVID-related expenses. So today we thought it would be prudent to speak to an institution that has expertise in this area, so that we can ask the question, where is COVID money going, and is our money safe?
It's a tough question to ask, and especially if you're not asking the people who are holding the cash.
True.
It's other
True.
people.
True.
Wow.
True.
So this institution that we're talking about is an institution that has been commenting a lot on economic affairs. So it's called the Institute for Economic Affairs. And the program coordinator, John Mutua, is in the studio with us this morning. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Traffic was smooth sailing this morning, according to what Nduh has been telling everybody. So we can see you're smiling. So therefore, you did not encounter any traffic. You are what?
Please don't
What?
prove me
What?
wrong.
What? Are you about to change this story?
No. It was actually apparently I was actually surprised because I left. I miscalculated, but apparently the traffic was smooth. We encountered. I think there's some accident just close, directly opposite the offices actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but otherwise it was smooth sailing.
That's a hot spot. So, I don't know what it is that people do there.
An
Every
economist will never tell you something is good. He has to, bring in something bad about it.
has to
Traffic
qualify.
is smooth this morning, but
Except-
economist John Mutua has told us, but there was an accident right here. I
Across.
miscalculated.
Directly.
Directly
Yes.
across your office.
So I'm talking about the road,
Association.
but he wants us to understand our gate has something to do with it.
Causing traffic jams and accidents.
We've got it. Yes.
Karibu, John. Welcome
you.
to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
You've had the Wanjiro's introduction.
Yes.
It's all about tracking the money.
Yes.
Let's first of all start with, what kind of figure are we talking about? How much money are we tracking that's come specifically to address COVID-19?
Okay. Now I've not done the maths in terms of the total, because what has been happening in terms of the quantum that the country has received, or the government has received, because this has also been coming at different times. And just to mention, I was trying to open my some analysis that we did. So the monies that we've gotten actually, and in terms of where we can get it, we actually don't have a one-stop shop. So it's either you go to the treasury, you have to get it from different sources. So most of them are actually from the treasury or the individual development partners. So in terms of foreign assistance or foreign aid, we have received some money from, I don't know why this is acting up, from IMF, from the World Bank, Africa Development Bank. I think those are the three large ones.
And large is how much?
Yeah, I'm just getting into that. I don't know why this.
This is
You
into
need
hundreds of billions, right?
Yeah, so from the World Bank,
It'll open as we continue
Yes,
the
yes.
conversation.
From the
and
World
then now
Bank-
there's the other support from individual governments.
Yes, yes. So we also have the COVID emergency response fund, which has also been
The
growing.
Harambe.
Yes, yes, yes.
Is the money coming in from the World Bank, IMF, so and so, all going into the emergency fund? Or is this money then going to wherever?
No, from the World Bank, from the development partners, it's part of it is coming as budget support. So it's being channeled through the government public finance management system. So as grants and loans. Then the one from the emergency response fund is separate. It's actually off budget. But there isn't much details about it. Because for this one, anyone can contribute, whether it's corporate, individuals, etc. So all those can contribute, yeah. So that's the difference. So this one is not being channeled through the budget system.
The fund is going to the fund. It's being managed by the board.
It's being managed. So there's a board there. I'm not sure. It has not been very transparent in terms of the accountability framework and the like.
You think?
I saw the chairperson recently in the media, basically just trying to break it down.
How about where do we classify the money? For example, is it earlier this week or late last week where the American government announced the 5 billion shillings support? And then the other embassies, the EU has also said, okay, we're going to support the fight against COVID in these areas, for example, in water provision and water services.
They donated 65 million euros.
Yep.
Which amounts to like 7.8 billion Kenyan shillings.
This is the EU, eh?
EU, yes. And the EU ambassador made a nice song and dance about it.
Yep.
Right.
Yes.
And theirs was going straight into these organizations
Yes.
that work on water. And remember, you were telling us about the Water Trust Fund
Yes.
and the rest, right? So it's going for that. And then there's what is coming from the Americans, the 5B, that was announced. It's coming straight to as money. And then there's the other support, like the police services have been given support.
Denmark
worth
also
X
gave us
amount.
something a while back.
Yep. So there's a lot of
Yeah, so
Money.
So one has to track. It's quite huge. Just to mention some of the huge resources that we've received. The IMF, they have what is called Rapid Credit Facility. So this is actually virtually all the sub-Saharan countries have, in one way or another, benefited from this. And IMF actually has you can get the list of all the
Is it a
beneficiaries.
grant or is it a loan?
It's a loan, 0 interest rate, and the amount is 78.3 billion
to Kenya alone.
to Kenya. This is to Kenya. Yeah, so it's basically
So it's concessional.
it's concessional. Yeah, it's actually 0%.
Yeah.
And of course, the period of payment, I didn't capture it, but it goes over, I think, 20 years.
Okay.
Then from the World Bank, you have something called the Contingency Emergency Response, 6.8 billion. Then they had another...
What are the terms for the World Bank?
The
Also
terms are not clear
Okay.
for that one, for the Contingency Emergency Response. But
Right.
it's likely to be also a concessionary loan. Then another second facility called this, they actually call it Second Development Policy Operation. So this is budget support. So this is being channeled through the budget. I think it's a loan, 108 billion. Then from the Africa Development Bank, we have a loan concessionary. I don't know the terms. It's 22.5 billion. European Union as a grant, 7.5 billion. So those are the ones that I was able to capture. We have much more. Like you mentioned, there is money that is also channeled to projects, directly to projects. It passes through it's channeled through some intermediary. It could be a civil society organ, an NGO, whether local, international, whether it's for different projects, water service provision projects and stuff like that, yeah.
So for practical purposes, this money isn't going through one channel. It's going through various channels, budget support, or it can go directly to these respective state agencies. How important is it for us to be able to trace this money? And are we able to trace it? Maybe because of the nature of the agreements, maybe it's very traceable. We shouldn't be worried at all.
Okay. I mean, so the first point in terms of just tracking, you can already see, since we don't have like a one-stop shop, it's not very easy to be able to tell who gave us what, when did it come, and stuff like that. Some of it is actually within National Treasury, and especially the funds that are going to be channeled through the public finance, through the budget, what is called the budget support. That and actually government prefers that for purely for public finance purposes or reasons. External funding that is channeled through government system, I would say, is easy to track, and also in terms of holding government to account on that.
How exactly do you hold the government to account?
So basically, after tracking and identifying first the amount, the quantum, and what the terms, one can engage with the parliament, or even engage directly in terms of asking questions. So we received this amount of money from for instance, Africa Development Bank. First, what are the terms? What is it meant for? Sometimes you can get a breakdown, sometimes you don't. So the idea is also to get a breakdown to understand what is this money going to be spent on. And then from there, you can follow up in terms of budget implementation. So we have various budget documents that are produced in the course of the financial year or during budget implementation that one can be able to review.
This is something an ordinary citizen can do.
Yes.
And which department do you exactly address these questions to?
Answer that question when we come back out of this break. It's 16 minutes after 7 o'clock. We are speaking with John Mutua, is a program coordinator with the Institute for Economic Affairs. We are asking, where is our COVID money going? That's our question this morning. And he's basically just, first of all, started by telling us where the money is coming from. And then now the question is, how do we start tracking it? How do we know exactly where it's going? Keep it right here. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a look at the weather. This conversation continues.
The sun's peeking through in some areas of Nairobi this morning. We're going to see highs of 23 today, and the chance of showers is quite high with lows of 11 in the city today. In Njeri at 14 degrees, cloudy conditions. Rain expected later with highs of 22 and lows of 11. And Nakuru is partly cloudy at 13 degrees. We'll see highs of 23 and lows of 11. Thunderstorms are forecasted for Eldoret with highs of 21 and lows of 12. Currently 13 and partly cloudy conditions. It's likely to be a wet afternoon in Kisumu as well with highs of 27 and lows of 18. And in Kakamega, partly cloudy at 16 degrees, highs of 23 with showers expected in the afternoon. Mombasa and Malindi will be rainy today. In Malindi, 28 degrees a high and lows of 23, highs of 28 and lows of 23 in Mombasa, with the rain holding out for just a little bit. In Kampala, 18 degrees, highs of 24 with thunderstorms in the afternoon. And Dar es Salaam follows in the same fashion with 27 the high and lows of 22 and showers later on. In Johannesburg, 7 degrees, mostly cloudy conditions, highs of 18 and lows of 7. And wrapping it up for now in Lagos at 24 degrees, we'll see showers in the afternoon with highs of 29 and lows of 23.
We continue this conversation at 21 minutes after 7. We're asking, where is our COVID money going? And in the studio to help us unravel that big riddle is John Mutua. He's a program coordinator at the Institute for Economic Affairs. You started by telling us where the money is coming from. 78.3 billion shillings from IMF Rapid Response Facility, Contingency Emergency Fund, 6.8 billion shillings from the World Bank. Now, without even going into the other, which was budget support from World Bank of 108 billion shillings. Now we're talking about some good billions. AFDB loan, 22.5 billion shillings. The grants from the EU at 7.5 billion shillings. Citi was asking you just before we went to the break, is how would an ordinary citizen access this kind of information?
Okay. Some of this information is available. I think the biggest challenge for the ordinary citizen is just the capacity and the awareness of where to track this information. But apparently we have different sources and certain budget documents that are produced that one can review and interact with and just be able to do some analysis. But that is not easy for the average
Why
person.
isn't it easy?
Because the way some of this information is presented,
What's the forum in which they present it? Is it on some website? Is it something that you must call directly or write to? How do you access this information?
So basically,
And
you're
which
talking
are the
about
documents? How do we get
and our
them?
literacy level.
so
could get
we
the
have
form, but-
documents.
Yes.
Which ones?
We have the budget policy statement.
Yes.
So that's the statement that was actually read by the Cabinet Secretary, CS for the National Treasury. Now, that document adds a couple of some of this information that I've just mentioned. I picked it from that document. Then, of course, we have so for instance, if we want to know all the loans and the grants that we've received, not only on COVID, but on other, for other or to other ministries, and what these loans are going to be spent on and stuff like that. That information is available in what you call the estimates of recurrent and development expenditure. So those are documents that are uploaded on the website.
Okay.
So by the end of April, when National Treasury or the national government tables its budget documents, they actually immediately in that evening, all those documents that have been tabled in Parliament would be posted, often posted on the website. So on that evening or the following day, you'll get all those documents. So if you want information related to revenues and information related to expenditure, you can get it from National Treasury website. And then, of course, in the course of the financial year, we have certain documents that are produced every quarter, just linking what was approved in terms of the budget and the spending by each quarter. So you can get those documents from the Office of the Control of Budget. These are called budget implementation reports, as well as from Treasury, quarterly budget and economic review. So for the average person, you have to know what
to look for.
Yeah, what to look for. Yeah. And that's so basically for us as the Institute of Economic Affairs, together with the likes of TISA, the Institute of Social Accountability, and other civil society organizations, we've been holding forums just to educate the public on how to engage with the budget and how to engage in the budget process and stuff like that. Yeah.
Question, John. When we look at COVID, because COVID has come after the BPS was read,
Yes.
and COVID came after, the government, of course, has revised the budget, given some revised estimates.
Yes.
But then there's also money coming in that's not going through the mainstream budget.
Yes.
If we want to track these monies that we are talking about that are coming, in an ad hoc manner, does apart from the announcements, and government is doing very well actually, they're announcing all the money. So we kind of have an idea. Where will that information then be captured? Then when it comes to expenditure, how will we track up to maybe the projects, up to the detail level? Because like I say, with the Eurobond, and maybe Eurobond was separate, was exceptional, 215 billion was not accounted for. This went in as budget support to institutions, and they couldn't then come back. And the Auditor General raised the question of, we are not able to get evidence or details of where this money went because it got mixed in with other money, and there is no documentation. So my question is, beyond the government statements, how should we track the money coming in? And then at the expenditure level, how should we track the expenditure?
Okay. Now, in terms of the money coming in, as I had mentioned earlier, tracking on budget support is, if you ask me, is easier than tracking off-budget support, because for off-budget support there must be some announcement. Basically, there must be some kind of a media, either it's something posted on the. So if it's money from EU, for instance, and it's off-budget, unless they announce somewhere that we've signed a contract with some government department or ministry for this amount of money for this purpose. Unless that is done, it's usually very difficult to track that. But often that would be somewhere. But what is easy to track is what is on budget, because that, in terms of what has come in, you are likely to get it from the National Treasury's website. It may not necessarily be on
details.
Sometimes so there are challenges around the details. Because often what is posted is just a snippet of, often just the amount. Rarely do you get information on the terms. And if it's the terms, they'll just say it's concessionary. They will mention the interest rate.
The tenure.
Sometimes the tenure may not be mentioned, but often the tenure you can get, and the interest rate, and that would be it. But now when you go to so long as it's budget support, if you go to the estimate of recurrent expenditure towards, those are large voluminous books, so they have details of all the loans and grants that we get, in what denomination, the tenures and stuff like that. So you can get that information. So all budget support, it's easy to track. So long as you have some
budget.
Yes. But off budget, it's not very easy to. Actually, even for off budget, sometimes the government may tell you that we are not aware that a certain project is being undertaken.
Supported.
Yes. Yeah. So
So
that's
even when you're able to track, we still end up with these corruption scandals where money has basically just gone and disappeared. So tracking on paper versus tracking in practice.
Yes.
How do you bridge that gap? On paper, they could tell you, for example, we received the 78.3 billion shillings rapid response facility, which we are dedicating to the fight against COVID-19 in the provision of PPEs, in purchase of testing kits, in equipping our hospitals, in training our healthcare workers, all those things. How do you now go to the ground and are able to basically keep track and say, yeah. When they say that they're fighting COVID-19, they actually bought mandazi.
Yeah. Correct. I mean, tracking it on on the ground is not easy. For some of those, it's either you. So we have certain documents. So, for instance, the Office of the Auditor General, of course, does the audit, and it's an important source of knowing what happened, whether the money that was channeled to the budget was actually spent as was approved. So the audit reports are critical documents where you can actually tell whether something happened or not. Of course, the media is very important in terms of highlighting whether certain funds were spent as were planned.
So in other words,
so as
we
opposed
need
to you
audit ourselves, we need to do citizen audits.
Yes, so citizens basically have to also, and I know the Office of the Auditor General is trying to put in some mechanism where they can engage with the citizens to help with the social accountability and social audits. So basically, citizens have to get on board and start doing this. I know for Constituency Development Fund, you've had lots of engagement where citizens are directly involved in tracking funds from the source all the way to the end user. But for these big sums of money, rarely would you see that follow-up.
Why?
It's a mix of things. Even just ability. For small projects, yes, you can track. For these big projects, I mean, you have, for instance, the likes of Galana Kulalu. The residents there may actually tell whether sometimes it could be the resident who are like, we've heard about these projects, but we don't see anything.
We haven't
on the
seen
ground.
activity
All right,
here
so
for a
let's
month
say
or
somebody
two.
heard something like that and they actually then went into this public the website, which is obviously public, and then now you actually go and find something and you see some smoke, which now indicates that there's some fire somewhere, and you start to read, and then you smoke out something that then could be that is suspicious. What's the recourse then after that? Because if we're saying that citizens are being encouraged to audit and to find out really where public funds are going, so you find something, what happens?
So you can engage. There are different avenues that one can use. So you can engage with the parliamentarians for them first to be able to raise those issues. You can also go through the court system, which is not very easy for the average person. Of course, you can do some thorough investigation.
On your own as an individual?
Often, as an individual, it's not easy. For instance, institutions, because in every county, of course, you'll find various civil society organizations doing different manner of things. We have those that are engaging on accountability issues. And so some of those may pick certain issues and either do further investigation and follow through in terms of maybe releasing a report that has investigated something. Let's say Galana Kulalu, we may issue, for instance, the Institute of Economic Affairs, we did a study on the listing of medical equipment.
Right.
What
did you find?
And our findings, one of the key findings was this project raises lots of value for money questions.
Explain value for money, please.
So what this means is that
let's take a quick break, take a look at traffic, and then you come in and give us this practical example of the MES project that you audited.
Okay.
And then now you shall help us to relate that with doing the same for our COVID-19 kind of assistance that we've received. At 25 minutes to 8, let's take a look at traffic. Good morning.
city of Nairobi. Let's take a step outside, though, for now, and take a look outside of the city. In Mombasa, trying to get into town centre today might be a bit of an issue, a bit of a hold-up right around Mariakani, trying to get into Mombasa town itself. There are police at the area, traffic police in the area, and trying to sort out whatever might be the hold-up there. So if you're stuck there, just be a little bit patient. That will be sorted out. Also, then let's look at Kisumu. Out on Omboto Road, heading towards the airport. In and outbound is actually flowing very well. There was an accident right just before the airport, but that is being sorted out today, and that's what Kisumu looks like. Take a look at Eldoret, Njeri, where there's not much traffic either from reports. Heading back then into the city of Nairobi, on Mombasa Road, getting into the city, I beg your pardon, doesn't look too bad either. A little bit of a hold-up right around the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, as you then get onto Uhuru Highway. Heading out of Westlands into the city centre and at the University Way roundabout, a little bit of a hold up there. Traffic police directing traffic. It shouldn't be too terrible. Taking a look at Thika Road also, getting into the CBD, it looks fine. How about we maintain it this way, shan't we? Spice MKE, that's how you can get us on Twitter if you see something out of the ordinary.
I don't know whether you noticed that when we were giving the traffic update, everywhere else is about roads, and when it comes to Kisumu, he's talking about traffic building up around the airport.
What is she telling us? Yeah?
Wait.
But
Okay.
do I say?
Apart from JKIA, Mombasa, Malindi, Eldoret, where else do we have an
international airport
of note? Where?
Answer.
Isiolo.
Actually, it is true. Even further, Wajir. But those aren't the size
Of Kisumu.
No, and neither are they international airports.
Get it right, man.
You even have one in Marsabit, but it's not an international airport.
Okay. Sawa. John Mutua is a program coordinator at the Institute for Economic Affairs. And John, you were telling us about your audit of the managed equipment service. And you're saying that you found there was no value for money.
Yes, so that was one. I mean, the primary finding that on about that project.
John, let me interrupt you. I actually want value for money explained. What
Yes,
is it?
yes. So simply, value for money is a situation where money may have been spent, but on something. For instance, in this case, it was intended for purchase of equipment, diagnostic equipment, dialysis, etc. But some of those equipment, those equipment in various counties, was in Gishu, West Pokot, etc., are lying idle. So all the necessary procedures and processes in terms of procurement may have been followed to the letter. But if a machine has been lying idle for a year or so, it is not serving the public, then of course that raises, it's a question of, it's a value for money. That's an example of a value, value for money.
The money has been sent, but no value has been attained
from that.
Yes. City says we are becoming very litigious as a country, and I want to ask, is that actionable in court in terms of, is that imprudent utilization of resources? If a public entity has done a procurement that is not showing value for money, is that something that can be taken to court, or IEA has not explored that?
No, we haven't explored that. So actually what we did with this, because as I mentioned, I mean, litigation is one of the public, is one of the avenues. And so people will, whether individuals or institutions, will try and follow whichever avenue, either based on their expertise and stuff like that. For us, what we did, we flagged it out. So we had a study on this. So that's what I was saying. In some situations, and the way to engage with government is to
get evidence.
Get evidence.
Hard facts.
Yes, hard facts. So that's what we did. Now, after that, we engaged with the Senate Committee for Health.
Yeah.
We were actually invited by the National Assembly Health Committee and presented our findings to them. And so...
And then the Senate committee that's been investigating the MES.
Yes, yes.
as well.
So actually what happened with this, there's a separate ad hoc committee that was established at the Senate to follow up on this directly. But also the health committee had actually started engaging on, just making follow-ups on this.
The
And
National Assembly.
Yeah. No, so that's the Senate.
Okay.
So there's a ad hoc committee at the Senate, as well as a health committee that had actually started following up on the mess before the ad hoc committee was created. So the ad hoc committee, the reason for its creation was it went down to the ground, of course, sampled a few counties, because for us, we didn't have the resources and the time to do that. So our analysis relied on the Auditor General's findings and some interviews. We complemented that with interviews. But for the ad hoc committee, they went to the ground. So the question that you asked, they went to the ground.
Okay.
So now one of the challenges with the mess, I must, that made even the analysis a bit, it took a bit of time and also was not as detailed as we would have wished, was we were not able to access.
Transparency.
Yes.
Information.
Contracts and the MOUs between national government and the counties.
Yeah.
Because the contracts will contain information on the terms and conditions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Neither were we able to get information from the suppliers. There are about 6 or 7 suppliers. Yeah. So that made it difficult to get certain. So for instance, when
you say it was difficult, is it that people who you sought the information from were not forthcoming?
they were not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even the counties themselves.
So for
Even
the
the
counties, we
suppliers.
were able to interview a few. But even the counties, by the way, even the Senate, they had challenges getting information from the Ministry of
Getting
Health.
the contract.
Yes, getting the contracts.
We're back to contracts. On Monday, we were
Getting the
talking about
contracts.
SGR.
Yes.
And again,
Yes.
that time it was about actually that was the budget agreement. Was it? It was the budget agreement that we couldn't get.
Yeah.
So here you're saying it's the contract.
So here we were not able to get the contracts. Neither were we able to get the MOUs.
Who was the minister at that
Contract.
particular point in time?
MOU.
We had
James,
Sicily.
And
James
who was-
it was James Muraguri.
Yes.
No,
PS.
PS. That was the PS.
PS.
Was
So
it
the
Masharia?
first-
There was Masharia
There was
first.
Masharia
and
was
then
there.
Yes, and then
there was Masharia,
Yeah,
and
it's
then
not
there
the
was
same one, it's
Cleopa
Sicily,
Mailu,
yeah.
and then
yeah,
Sicily.
Kiopa
Same.
Mailu,
And then Sicily.
and then
Let's bring
Sicily.
the conversation back now to fight against COVID and the money that we are receiving and how we follow up. You've seen, of course, reports in the media initially and reports as well on social media. When the PS for the Ministry of Health took out some report, then went and took back that report and presented a fresh report trying to explain the way they were budgeting some money. It was about 1 billion shillings at that point,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
On how they were budgeting to use that billion shillings. Now, here we are talking about receiving 78.3 plus 6.8 billion from just World Bank and IMF, specifically going to respond to this emergency that we have. So this is a lot of money. How do we know how the Ministry of Health is intending to utilize this money, or just basically the government is intending to utilize this money to address this specific need,
And not
then
divert.
how divert it?
Okay, that's a difficult question. For some of these resources,
We might
it's
not
been
know.
clear. For some, it's clear that, for instance, the World Bank, I think most of it is going towards, I think it's a mix, towards improving the health infrastructure. So, for instance, it will go towards purchase of
beds,
PPEs, and stuff like that.
ventilators.
Yeah. And the other part is also going towards supporting businesses, SMEs, and the like. Yeah.
So some of them are quite clear on what they want to
Yes,
support.
yes.
That if it was to be audited, we should be able to do so. But
And is it also
not all
clear?
of it.
Are we clear about the support that is required?
Whether it was asked for.
No, the details of it. When you say support is a general word. But support, let's say it was support for water provision. Okay. Where and what exactly.
Yep.
So that when you are asking,
Is it drilling boreholes?
Yeah,
Or
what
is
is
it
it? What is it?
reticulation?
So, yes.
Increasing the piping?
Yes.
Or what exactly are we talking
so
about?
that when you want to determine whether these funds were actually utilized for what was intended, you can check and say, this one was for were the boreholes drilled?
Yep. Because you see,
Were the pipes provided?
the questions that were emerging with this 1 billion shilling was on the detail. Was on, you can say, yes, this is what we were intended to do, but then if
What
it
did you
comes down
actually
to
do with it?
Yeah.
actually is supporting meetings and buying mandazi and sausages and spending
Even them, they were
800
not specific on samosas because
how many
they
samosas,
didn't
how
tell
many
us
people?
whether they were vegetable or whether they were meat.
the exact details
Because
of
the
this.
queries raised by the AG on this example that I'm using on the Eurobond is that he couldn't get the supporting documentation.
Yes.
So he couldn't establish where it went.
Yes.
Yep.
So it's very easy for government to appropriate or to say, yes, this money is going for that purpose. It's disbursed. Then it goes into half goes into a black hole.
Take another break at 7:45. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Also telling you about KPA's new portal. That's an information portal, Captain Cargo. So it's out there. It's open and accessible for you. It's public. You know, it's very important that we say it's public. Just log on to www.kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo, KARGO.
Promising of certain standards that will be kept. So we're looking at general standards that we looked at before, standards for port operations. So aids to navigation. So when CT was exporting his precious cargo yesterday, you could be assured.
Specifically what I was exporting.
Avocado.
Thank you very much.
Avocado.
Sorry.
Oh, precious could mean many things.
Avocado.
Avocado. We know.
Oh,
Is that
joy.
a fruit or a vegetable? Okay. Avocado.
We'll look into it
Food.
and
Food.
Superfood.
Yes.
it's a superfood. There you go. Voila. Well done, Eric. So you would be assured of, aids to navigation. So you would know where it is that you needed to go. As we went through all the steps yesterday, by the time you got to KRA, made those payments, KPA sent that information all across board, and then you get your, what color did you want your slip to be? Pink or yellow, whatever it
Blue,
was.
actually.
Blue, right. You got your blue slip, which is a position paper.
What you didn't tell me, do they accept M-Pesa payment?
I'm sure in
What
this
are
day
you
and
saying? Are
age,
you
in this day and
paying
age, they
via
would.
M-Pesa to China.
No.
The
They don't
payment
pay to
of
they
the
pay to
KRA,
KRA
those
and then
processes.
Processes.
those
Oh,
processes.
for
I'm sure
their-
they would. I don't think.
We'll ask
But
the
the
we'll ask
portal
the-
would give you that information very clearly, and that's one of the fantastic things about the portal, because then it allows you to see all the information that you would be looking for would be here, right? So aids to navigation, very clear for you how you're going through, and the time that it would take you to do all this is now what is available, and Captain Cargo does that for you, as you saw yesterday. Seamless operations, and people in China are enjoying avocado as we speak.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM.
10 minutes to 8. The conversation continues with John Mutua, Program Coordinator for the Institute for Economic Affairs. What's happening?
I'm not getting the money back.
She wants a refund.
I want a refund. It doesn't work.
Okay. No, we'll talk about that.
She's not getting it.
Those are domestics. Want our money back.
Sorry.
Can you imagine if the IMF said it wants its money back? 78.3 billion
Or
shillings.
more people will run away from this country. Where will they get it from to refund you? They've already used it.
You're not talking about small money. There are bigger
Money is
problems.
money.
Bigger
They say, watch
problems.
the penny, the
Yeah.
pound.
What are they going to do?
John, so the issue of tracking this particular expenditure for COVID-19, is there a document that indicates, and it is being regularly updated, on this is what's happening? For example, we are seeing now, we were speaking to the CEO of the County Council of Governors yesterday, and counties are still asking for more support. They need support for communication. They need support in terms of even transporting the samples that they collect in their counties to take them to the testing facilities. Is there some clarity on how this money is being utilized? Or do we have to wait until the Auditor General's report comes out at the end of the financial year?
Yeah, so there's no clarity on that. I had to actually try and pull out some information from the ANSAD. Sometimes, because you see, some of these things are discussed in, not some, they're actually often discussed in Parliament. So on this invitation, I tried to just pull out those because, as I mentioned, there is no upfront information on even regular updates, like for instance on COVID emergency response fund. And I know counties have been complaining through COG. So you can imagine if, for instance, the COG does not have certain information, who would have it? Yeah. So that's a challenge actually. That's
This
a challenge.
right of Article 35 really is very abused because people have gone to court, institutions have gone to court on various requests for information, and it's and government still withholds. And then you find corruption issues surrounding the particular question or issue under for which information is sought. So I think we need to get outside the box because it's a recurring thing.
Yeah.
I don't know whether we need more Kenyans to use the access to information law.
No.
In fact, we did some work, a small campaign about a year ago, and we found the media doesn't use the access to information law much. Maybe if the media started using it, as well as civil society and maybe more people, it will help. Either that or we can just change the government.
I think an awareness and comprehension of his existence in the first place then leads to someone being able to use it. I'm sure if you did a spot check around and just asked people about their awareness of it in the first place, you'd be very surprised.
Of what value do you think
you'd be very
these people
surprised.
we are
And then,
speaking of-
secondly, you want to ask yourself
So
where does it resonate with them in the first place? How does it matter?
That's
So there's a law. So what? What am I supposed to do with it? How am I supposed to use it? And how is it important to me? And those are very critical questions that you want to ask, even in the application of said law.
In fact, as you asked that question and we're talking about meds, or maybe even the COVID borrowing, it means that citizens don't feel connected.
Yes.
At all.
Citizens are
The
like,
disconnect,
when
yeah.
I go, I want to get health care.
I don't want to take up another job.
I don't care where the money came from.
I don't want to take up another job because now it's like you're asking me to take up this other job of going, asking public information, sitting down and trying to understand the public information. I'm trying to fight to stay alive. All right? I'm trying to get money to feed myself and my family for today. So this other thing is basically distracting my immediate attention.
But
Mindset.
when VAT is increased, because government borrowed and didn't pay, you're still going to pay.
True.
So maybe we need to make the connection.
Yeah. And I just want to mention, like on the mess, there are a number of civil society organizations that had already gone ahead through the ombudsman, office of the ombudsman, to complain because they had made some requests for the contracts on
Yep.
the mayors, the
Yeah.
MOUs, etc. And they had been following this up for a while, but I
They're
remember.
doing the job. of
Yes, they
following.
still hadn't. Yeah, they still hadn't gotten those documents. Yeah,
You see, when
even by following certain laid down
Procedures, and you still.
channels. Yeah,
we're saying counties are saying they don't have enough money, it means even at the local level they are not able to respond. Tax has gone up. All of these are linked to borrowing, lack of accountability in the expenditure side.
You know,
So
that argument, Wanjiro, unfortunately, will actually encounter a roadblock in the experiences that some other counties have had. We had Governor Mutua here, and there's something very specific he said. You look at the problems, you look at the resources, and you decide. You decide.
You work with your reality.
Yes, other departments, other areas will suffer, but this area is crucial, so I'm going to take my money there. Because right from the onset of devolution, the counties have never received all the money that they are required to receive.
Yeah.
And I mean the word specifically, required to receive. They've never received it. That's the reality. So if they get it piecemeal, another reality. Another reality is, what then do you do with the resources that you have? We know it is inadequate. So that story is tired and old. We know. But what do you do with what you have?
yeah, but the question I was asking is, and maybe that's the question citizens ask. Citizens are more concerned about corruption, about how the money is used, but they don't ask questions. I don't know.
They want to
how,
see
how
if-
come citizens are concerned
if
about
more-
corruption but won't ask for the information?
If more and more citizens saw the work of the counties like practically and seeing, and then the government say, can you imagine, I only did that with half of what I was supposed to have received.
Imagine if I
And
got.
if
Imagine
I'd gotten
if I got
more,
the full amount.
I'd like more so that we can, for example, complete this and this other project. I can build this other hospital in this sector or this part of the county.
And this is what we
similar to
keep
the one that
saying.
we saw.
You have to create a scenario where people are able to imagine what could be in the absence of corruption,
And then
in
you rally
the
them around
absence
that.
of pilfering and such. Create a scenario where people can see this is actually what can happen. And so when they see that, the likelihood of them pushing for it is much higher.
Just a quick
Imagine what
point.
happens when
Quick point.
an hour runs so fast.
Quick point.
Imagine what would
County
happen if this
budget-
hour was a bit longer.
County Budget Economic Forum, that is why I think counties did not make those bodies strong, because they were interested.
yeah.
These
John, as we come to the end of the show, your final and closing remarks.
So I mean, as we've been discussing, I think there's need for the public to show more interest and be hungrier about how the government is spending public resources,
Right.
because this actually has an effect actually on taxes, because what happens is that the more borrowing and the more government borrows, it's actually, but borrowing is also sometimes what is referred to as deferred. There's an expectation that taxes will go up. So it's important for the public to continue being vigilant and to continue putting pressure on government. We've had some certain successes, but they need to push more. Especially on
Be more
not just on
engaged.
the COVID, be more engaged. We have certain success stories, but I think that there is need for more civil society organizations to come together to be able to hold government to account, because this is what is likely to bring better resources and improve the well-being of
Thank you.
Kenyans.
Thank you very much for coming to us. And as we say goodbye to you, CT Muga is going to tell you today's proverb.
When you show the moon to a child, they only see your finger.
Meaning?
Moon, child,
Finger.
point.
Finger.
Yeah.
Daddy, look, moon.
the child sees you.
Okay.
You're their whole universe.
Yeah.
It's 8 o'clock. Thank you very much, John, for coming, and have a good day.
Yeah,
8
thank
o'clock. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a look at traffic.
All right, not looking too terrible around most parts of the city. Back in Nairobi, Ngong Road looks absolutely fantastic, heading down towards Valley Road and other parts of the city as you approach the City Stadium roundabout. Getting into the CBD won't be too much of a headache today. We're looking at great traffic, and you might want to even sing a song while you're in it today because it's not looking bad at all. Spice of MKE, if it does look bad, let us know where it is that it's happening. You can spread the word or at least give you an alternative route to use. Off Thika Road, getting into the CBD is not bad either. Joining with Kiambu Road and from Muthaiga Corner to the Pangani Underpass, looking very, very good. I don't even have words. So I'll stop now. And if it gets worse, we'll let you know later.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Traffic. This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty,
3 minutes after 8, the Situation Room continues. Hey, okay, so as we're beginning the show, remind us today's riddle.
Researcher, academic, seasoned political observer,
no,
a fountain of wisdom.
City, I'm a bit concerned.
Focus.
Nduh Okoh.
When I'm
Nigerian by birth,
outside,
Kenyan
I'm
by
safe.
choice,
When I
communications
get
expert,
inside,
Pan-Africanist,
I am
a truth
no
seeker
longer
and
safe.
believer in people
And this
power.
has to do with
And
COVID, so I don't know why
Latiff,
this is so difficult.
Agent
And it has to do
provocateur,
with
the man
a
in the chair,
statement
seasoned
made this
journalist,
week.
newshound,
Yes.
a man
About
who
air-
believes
about,
in punching up, not down.
Transmissions. Airborne. It's airborne. So it's easier
almost,
when
you are
it's
almost there.
Not
airborne.
hers. She's borrowing somebody
she's
else's
borrowing.
answer. Give credit where it's due. Someone
Who's
has
borrowing
answered
from-
this on social media. Okech
Where?
or Tete.
Yes.
The answer to the riddle is airborne transmission of COVID-19. You are safer outdoors than indoors. That is his attempt.
Good
Nduh, what is
attempt,
your
but
attempt?
no.
I was
But
thinking
there was a word in there.
Transmission.
There was a word in there.
airborne.
There was a word there.
Because there's an article that came out yesterday from the World Health Organization where they talked about that they might recall what they initially said about COVID being airborne.
That word is part of the third clue, because the first clue was COVID, second clue was it was this week. Airborne is
the third one.
Is the third, but you don't have to take the whole word.
This
Air.
riddle is confusing people
Yes.
now.
It has something to do with the air.
Yes, I get it. It's
Good.
okay, so what was it? I saw an article and what was it? What was being said about the
Was there?
You see our
fresh-
investigative.
the freshness of air. So when you're outdoors, because of air circulation,
It's open.
No.
it's open, and when you're indoors, there's still air about air circulation.
That's not it.
You guys aren't getting
City
it.
City
No,
just-
no. I am on radio. People are listening. These adults,
grown-ups. We
these
are
adults only conversations. No, sorry.
City, wherever your mind
I
has
am
gone,
not.
you'll be in shock.
He's not boarding.
No, I'm
not
not.
voting.
So when you
member.
are willing to present the sanitized version, you carry on and present it. And I will act as though I believe you.
So first hint is that it's about COVID-19. Second hint is about an announcement made this week, and the third week is about air.
Yeah, it's about air, something to do with air.
If you can help us solve this riddle by Njeri this morning, 0719012600, or on our social media platform, Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Hey, now let's move the conversation into this hour. Let's talk about governance, talk about our country, and what this week we've celebrated Sabasaba, and Sabasaba has a lot of relevance to what is happening in the country today, because it was the beginning. It was a Njeri Thorne said it was a culmination of a push for multipartyism and openness in society from the previous decade of the 80s, where there was a lot of the one-party rule and oppression. And now Sabasaba celebrated that, the openness, and we got to a journey where we got multi-partyism in the country. 10 years later, 20 years later, we got the new constitution in 2010. 30 years later, we are now looking back at the journey of this whole movement for 30 years and what lies ahead for the country. And among the people who have taken over the mantle from the Njeri Thorne and the late George Nyona and the rest is the new breed of civil society activists who are out there, who are talking about governance, who are raising issues of corruption, who are raising issue of accountability. One of them is the CEO of an organization called Inuka Kenya Nisisi. Just that by itself tells you that it's saying it's about us. It's about time that we took action.
Rise up.
Rise up. Kenya is us. And the CEO of this organization is John Githongo. He joins us on the line. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, John, we have just given the introduction and said, this is a week that's very important in looking at the journey of this Second Republic from the 1990s. 30 years of what we now call the Second Republic of the Republic in Kenya. What do you make of it? Have we moved very many steps forward and 0 steps backward?
I think we have moved many steps forward. I think the very fact that Spice FM exists is a testament to the changes that took place at the end of the 1980s, at the beginning of the 1990s. You might. I know you might be quite young. You were quite young at the time, but media wasn't as free as it was. The very fact that you're able to tell your listeners to be able to contact you via social media, etc. So Kenyans enjoy a range of freedoms, rights and freedoms, which do not really exist for us between the 1960s and the early 1990s. So we've definitely moved forward, and we moved forward still further. By 2010, when we promulgated the new constitution, and the reason Sabasaba, which was celebrated on the 7th of July, Tuesday this week, resonates so much on this 30th anniversary of Sabasaba, is the fact that unfortunately it seems as if we are sliding back into the kind of dictatorship we had. The kind of people that you mentioned, the Kitobu Manyaras, the Njeri Thorne, the Paul Moites, the Martha Karuas, the Martha Komes, all that they fought for is in danger of being stripped away. And the pressures are different now. For yourselves in media, for example, the kind of challenges you're facing in terms of the commercial model you have, the way government advertising is used against you, the challenges the judiciary is facing. It's almost under siege now. The fact that Parliament is increasingly resembling the Kanu-era Parliament. All those are indicators that are troubling, especially now when the COVID pandemic has served to attenuate and to accelerate trends that were already there before, negative ones. And so that is the reason this year's 30th anniversary of Sabasaba was so important, to remind ourselves from where we've come, and also as a caution that we should not slip back to the dark days when we Kenyans do not enjoy the kind of freedoms that allow you and me to have this conversation we're having today.
John, the Limuru morning. The Limuru meeting was very critical about BBI. In fact, kind of made a statement that you're going to go all out to defeat the BBI, and then talked about Limuru 3 as the formation of a citizens' movement. Could you just expand more on that?
I think that the concerns that, one of the ironies of the Building Bridges initiative is that it was a personal agreement between President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. And Kenyans are still waiting for the details of this agreement. We get snippets, the odd article in the media, the odd statement here and there, lots of stuff on social media in terms of the proposals that they're making. And so the opacity of the process has been extremely troubling in terms of what recommendations they're going to make. It's very different from the constitution making process that saw a much higher level of public participation, with Professor Yash Palgai and his team going around the country and listening to people, and people are ultimately seeing those recommendations in the constitution. BPI is very different, and so that's the first concern. Secondly, some of the indicators as to what is being suggested in terms of constitutional changes, with even suggestions of a referendum, are of great concern, because we ask ourselves, why are we seeking to change a constitution which we haven't actually successfully implemented? There are a range of elements of the constitution, chapter 6 on integrity, for example, which have not been implemented, and we're talking about changing that constitution. And therefore, one feels a certain energy that this needs to be resisted by all Kenyans of goodwill, and of course there's the political suspicion that some of those who are pushing most determinedly for a change in the constitution were the ones who opposed this new constitution in 2010. So that also causes nervousness and suspicion.
John, when you talk about the opacity of the handshake and the agreement between the two gentlemen, we had the Secretary General of ODM here, and when the question was raised to him, he countered by saying, look, the details of this agreement were made public by the two gentlemen when they appointed a task force, the BBI task force, and they gave them the terms of reference. The 9 points terms of reference are indicative of the kind of agreement that they had arrived at.
Absolutely. I mean, and the 9 points that were expressed, that were articulated by the President and Bwana Odinga in March of 2018, were rather woolly and unclear. If I can put it like that, I mean, it was really like pulling a page out of discussions that we had already had as Kenyans. If you look at the Kofi Annan report after the 2007-2008 violence, so yes, there was a terms of reference that was put forward, but the process of actually putting together the report, yes, the BBI committee has held hearings. I have appeared before that committee, and I have presented before them. But after that, it's not been clear what's going on. If you remember the constitution making process last time, we had an entire Bomas conference, where, media were able to televise it. Kenyans were able to watch as these debates about their future, about the social contract, the political contract between those who are governed and those who govern in this country were being hammered out. We're able to watch it. This is a very different process. Yes, there's a terms of reference, very true. Yes, the BBI committee has listened to a lot of people.
Yep.
After that, there's a back room where everything is being written, and we are waiting with bated breath as Kenyans, without an idea of whether the views of Kenyans will be captured in a proper way.
Again, one could argue that even if you look at the Bomas conference, what preceded the Bomas conference was this kind of push and pull that now we are seeing you raising. There was the first, establishment of a CKRC, which did not include input from civil society and the opposition. Then there was bringing together the civil society, Fungamano, into CKRC by Yash Palgai. Then there was, going around the country. By the time we're getting to Bomas, what is happening now had also happened in the beginning.
Correct, but I mean, I would argue that was the process in vis-a-vis the Constitution was different in one respect. Yes, there was a pulling and shoving and pulling, which is natural and to be expected when you're talking about these grand political things that are going to shape the terms under which we're going to live our lives. But with the process that led up to Bomas, yes, there was pulling and shoving, and it was gradually, with all the rancor and debate that preceded it, the process became more and more inclusive. That is not the feeling one gets out of this process. Yes, we speak to it, but it retreats into darkness, and you're told to wait that a document will be produced that will be ostensibly representative of the Kenyan people and their views. This hasn't been inclusive at all in that respect.
Going by, actually, if we were to compare the two processes, it was civil society together with the church and, of course, then the opposition that really demanded and gave a push for the conference. Are you open to the possibility that the process can then open up for a inclusive dialogue now that there is a report? Are you open for that option, and is that one of the things, one of the proposals on the table?
One of the proposals on the table that came out of Sabasaba is for people to organize and to resist any attempt to change the constitution, especially to constitutionalize some of the reversals we have seen with regard, for example, to the judiciary, to the way that the civil servants are appointed, etc. To a whole raft of measures that are contained in the current constitution, which have been degraded, especially over the last 8 years, by this particular administration. However, if they were to say stop, let us share this report and then have a proper discussion. And it's not only civil society that I think should be consulted, but ordinary Kenyans in a much more transparent process. When Yash Balgai and his team went around the country, anybody could show up. The media could show up, could record the events, even when they were quite cantankerous, when there was a lot of heated debate because of the major issues that afflict Kenya, like land, like corruption, etc., were raised. And I think that's very important for this to be seen as an authentic and a credible process. And therefore the outcome will be determined. The terms of reference, Kenyans are masters of putting together terms of reference and producing reports. We are the best in East and Central Africa. And you can go onto government websites, and we have brilliant reports that we put together. Too. Exactly. We are masters. We're masters of it, and that also has undermined trust in this process, because we've seen it before. It's one of the things that the elite here does when they are faced with a severe governance problem. Form a committee or commission. They will produce a report, and that satiates people's anger and people's distress about the governance issues that they are facing, but actually nothing changes.
It remains just a report.
John, let's take a quick break. We want to take a look at the weather at 20 minutes after 8, and then we continue this conversation. Just stay on the line. We are speaking with John Githongo. He is the CEO of Inuka Kenya Nisisi. At 20 minutes after 8, taking a look at traffic, and then we continue this conversation.
In some parts of Nairobi today, we'll see 14 degrees, highs of 23. Again, the chance of showers in the afternoon. And in Njeri at 14 degrees, it's mostly cloudy, highs of 22 and lows of 11. 23 degrees the high and lows of 11 in Nakuru today with partly cloudy conditions. In Eldoret, it's forecasted to be a wet afternoon with thunderstorms, highs of 21 and lows of 12. In Kisumu, it's partly cloudy at 21 for now, highs of 26 with showers expected for most parts of the afternoon. In Kakamega at 17 degrees, we'll see highs of 24 today and lows of 15 with showers expected later. Partly cloudy conditions in Malindi at 26 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 23. And in Mombasa at 26 degrees, we'll see highs of 28 and lows of 23 with partly cloudy conditions. In Kampala, it's mostly cloudy at 20 degrees. We will see highs of 24 and lows of 18 with thunderstorms in the afternoon. In Dar es Salaam at 24 degrees, showers are expected later with highs of 27 and lows of 22. In Joburg, it's mostly cloudy at 7 degrees. We'll see highs of 18 and lows of 7. And finally, for now, in Lagos, clear skies currently at 24 degrees. Showers expected later with highs of 29 and lows of 23.
Kenya's biggest conversation reflecting what's happening in the country and the world. In the room is CT Muga, Nduh Okoh, Njeri Thorne, and I'm Latiff. And on the line is CEO of Kinuka Kenya and CC, John Gidongo. We're talking about governance and accountability. And as we were going into the break, John, there's a question that Wanjiro had raised. Like, would you be open to engaging with on this particular conversation? And I'd like to take you back to even the days of before we got into Constitution of Kenya 2010. Yesterday we were speaking with Professor Kivuda Kibwana. He was a spokesperson for the National Convention Executive Council in the clamor for the new constitution. And looking at also the religious leaders, like Wanjiro said, religious leaders had come together and seen the need for them to engage and participate in that push for new constitution. The Ufunga Mano initiative was there for Born. We had people like NCCK and the Reverend Mutava Musiemi participating. What's the role of the civil society now in this present conversation, as opposed to you talking from outside and pointing fingers and accusing everything and saying that there's underhand deals happening? What's your role in participating in it? Don't you see space for you to do that?
I think, as I said, I have presented before the PPI commission, so it's a committee. So it's not as if people have refused to engage with this process. That is not true. It's a questioning of the process itself that is taking place, and because what has emerged, and again, partly because of the opacity that has surrounded the production of this report, we are left to what politicians say, what is published in the media as purportedly contained in this in the report that is going to come out of the BBI process. So we are left to a lot of speculation, and that is never a good thing. And it causes us to ask also the more fundamental question: if what we are hearing about the process is true, where fairly significant constitutional changes are being contemplated, that may even require a referendum, and what is wrong with the current constitution? What is so wrong with the current constitution that we are moving to change it now, 10 years later, when we haven't actually successfully implemented it since 2010? That in 10 years, actually we've implemented elements of the constitution, but we've also seen some fairly dramatic reversals. For example, with regard to corruption, more recently with regard to the behavior of the police, especially in the informal settlements of Nairobi, amongst the poorest of Kenyans during this coronavirus crisis. So that is the question that we're asking. So no one has refused to engage. And said we have already engaged. We said, hey, hold on. This process needs to be a lot more inclusive and a lot more open to wananchi, for it to have the credibility and authenticity that leads people to move away from the position now that, well, this seems to be something that the politicians are cooking up, and then trying to get it rubber stamped for authenticity by wananchi via a process that really isn't as thorough as what we've seen before, that, as a process that gave birth to this constitution. So no one has refused to engage. As I said, we have engaged, because saying, hold on, you go in, you give your comments, you walk out, and the next thing you're seeing is that I'm listening to Spice FM and somebody's talking about perhaps this proposal, perhaps that proposal. I'm reading that newspaper, that proposal, this proposal on social media. So I say, hold on. This is very messy, and some of the proposals that are being made seem to be very self-serving for the elite, and
John,
that is also very, very troubling.
Can I ask, with respect to the Limuru 3 conference, what is the defining issue or the defining issues around, Kenya's liberation, or the third liberation, or the democratic process? What's the defining issue that was identified, and what are the resolutions that came out of the conference that Kenyans can get excited about?
I think the most important resolution was for us to begin to come together, not only civil society, but all Kenyans of goodwill in all sectors. And as you said, this is something that has happened before. To defend this constitution, to defend the current constitution, because I think we worked hard to produce this constitution. A lot of people suffered and died that we may have this constitution. So first of all, to defend it, and then elements of it that are critical, that have really changed Kenyan's governance landscape totally, like devolution, ensure that we protect devolution. So it was a commitment that the civil society and all Kenyans of goodwill should come together, not only to protect the constitution, but to ensure that a few families, essentially protecting their own political and commercial interests, don't use the excuse of fine-tuning, improving the constitution to protect their own private interests.
John, can I ask you, even as you say that, and say that, Kenyans should come together with the organizations of goodwill, etc., assuming that a majority of Kenyans actually are interested in seeing that the constitution that was put together in 2010 is what they want to follow, how should this happen? How must it happen? As opposed to saying come together, practically, how should that happen?
Practically, the way it happens is that we saw on this last Tuesday, we saw a whole range of social justice movements on the streets of Nairobi, demonstrating to against police brutality and to defend the constitution. We had the meeting in Limuru that brought together a range of players. And I think that Kenyans have experience of this before. It's for civil society. We have structures that we are able to create that bring in Kenyans from all the different counties that we begin to defend our constitution. So practically, it's Kenyans sitting down, organizing, and saying, okay, this is what where we stand for, and this is where we don't want to go back to, and the constitution allows us to enjoy the freedom that we do now, and we resist all attempts to undermine that. And so the organizing is organic, and I think it doesn't have to be. It's not only civil society; it's the religious community, business community is in big trouble now. Coronavirus the pandemic has simply accelerated trends that were already there before in terms of the accumulation of debt and corruption associated with that debt that has led Kenya into a condition of fiscal distress as of last year. Forget this year where COVID-19 has made things all much worse. And so the infrastructure for people to be able to resist this is organic, in that organizations and individuals already exist on the ground that can be brought together physically, but because of COVID, also virtually, to be able to take action opposing the most retrogressive elements or proposals that may come out of the elite using BBI.
Okay, and what kind of results do we see? Even if people have come together, even if they have agitated for some kind of change using whatever platform, whether it's social media, in the current times in which we are in, what kind of results have we seen? Because one positive move begets another. One result begets yet another. So what are we seeing in terms of tangible results that we can say people have come together and this is what has been achieved through that?
I think, for me, just watching the last 5-6 years where we've had a reversal of some of the, many of the freedoms that we had began to take for granted, really since 2002, and then most urgently from 2010. You've seen a range of actions taken by government, challenged in court through public interest litigation, by civil society, by individuals. We have individuals like Okia Omatata, etc., the work of the Katiba Institute. And they've been very successful and in terms of defending the rights of Kenyans and upholding the principles and values that underlie our constitution. So that has been very, very positive, and I think that it is now what has simply happened is that a combination of succession politics, which is normal. 2022 is coming up, and succession politics is one that we expect. But a combination of that, an economic crisis that is fueled by the profligacy and corruption of this particular administration, and then the COVID pandemic have combined to create for
perfect
a far more urgent. It is. You've put it just right. It's a perfect storm, and more than a health crisis, it's a governance crisis that Kenya faces. I remember I think the Foreign Affairs Minister or the Minister of Health of Singapore said that COVID-19 will test people's health systems, but it will also test people's governance systems, and it will test the social capital that governments have. Those are the three things. So you can have an excellent health system, and we've seen some countries, even in the West, who have excellent health systems having difficulty responding to COVID because of governance challenges.
Yep.
And so Kenya is faced now with a perfect storm of governance challenges and
social capital as well. John,
social capital and trust is low in this government.
Let's take another break. Let's take another break at 27 minutes to 9. We want to see what's happening on the roads, a little bit of traffic update, and then this conversation continues. And when we come out of this, I'm just going to ask you straight up, is this another Ufungamano moment, an opportunity for civil society to come together with all these other justice organizations, civil justice organizations, to come together to speak with one voice on what is currently happening, especially with regards to the BBI process and others? Good morning. It's 26 minutes to 9.
All right, spot check on Limuru Road, where it's moving very slowly all the way from Ruaka past the village market and then on to into the CBD, rather very slow this morning, and that's what we look at now. Roundabout at Kariobangi also, there seems to be a little bit of a hold up there, but apart from that, other areas in the city seems to be moving along quite smoothly from Langata Road to Uhuru Highway, and Uhuru Highway all the way from the Nyayo Stadium roundabout until Westlands seem to be moving good at this point. Coming out of traffic hour in a short while, but it looks like you wouldn't have many problems turning into headaches with traffic this morning. If you do, let us know. We'll spread the word or at least find an alternate route. Spice FMKE, that's how you can get in touch.
Traffic.
Any questions or comments for John Gidongo, who is the CEO of Inuka Kenyan CC, on our social media, Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And John, now that we're back, just answer that question straight up. Is this another opportunity for civil society and religious organizations and others to come together and speak now with one voice to counter what you're saying seems to be the voice that is leading the BBI conversation?
I think, yes, it is very much another Ufungamano moment. As you said, it is a perfect storm. It's a governance storm that is accelerated by a health pandemic. This is the moment, because to talk about changing the constitution, given the circumstances, the political circumstances that attend right now, and the kind of interests that have been expressed by the different political players as to the kind of governance environment they want, the way the judiciary has been treated, the way Parliament has been panel beaten into line, the way the security services have been used and abused, the way the revenue collection agencies also have been used and abused. But if the changes that come are an elite deal that, in a sense, constitutionalizes the undermining of the 2010 constitution, then yes, this is an Ufungamano moment for all Kenyans of goodwill, the religious community, civil society, business community, etc., to all come together to resist and to see that the constitution that we implemented in 2010 is actually the one that holds sway in our country.
Mr. Gidongo, would you say, in personal opinion, whether the last 3 elections in this country represented the will of the people?
2017 most certainly did not. I mean, that was very clear. 2013, very, very dubious. 2007, 2008, I don't even need to talk about that. That one speaks for itself in terms of very blatant rigging and the reaction that almost led Kenya to a civil war. It created the kind of urgent environment that saw the constitution process accelerated. We Kenyans terrified ourselves in terms of what we can do to each other in 2008. And so 2010 we had a new constitution, but then we went into an election that was very contentious in 2013, so very dubious. 2017, I would say we had an electoral process. We didn't have an election. And what it denied the government, this particular administration, which is unfortunate for any administration, is legitimacy. And you can have power, you can have money, you can hold all the levers of power, but if you don't have legitimacy in the eyes of the majority of the people, then even simple things become extremely difficult. And we've seen that slightly, and this is some of the social capital that we've been talking about, and the governance system, and in terms of our response to COVID-19, which I think the government has tried its best. But for example, in the wearing of masks, many of the measures are being enforced by the police. Where the ability for leaders to convince people, hey, wear a mask, not only to protect yourself, but to protect those you love and those you work with. Inability just to persuade, to convince, isn't there? That we have to securitize and militarize very simple decisions that the government makes. That is a sign of a government that lacks legitimacy in the eyes of its people, and it's forced to, the police, not the health sector, are the front line of dealing with COVID-19 in Kenya.
I'm interested to know why CT was asking this question. You must be heading somewhere. Where
I am heading somewhere. Among the many things the BBI has proposed, is it then possible to say that this is the one thing the BBI seeks to correct?
Let's see. Let's see what the BBI proposes. The thing is, I mean, this is why
before we get to seeing, John, looking at the conversation, at the terms of reference,
At the
report, doesn't it give it a bit of? I mean, don't you say that there's reason and there's an opportunity for BBI to address something that is tangible? Because at some point in your conversation, you appear to be suggesting that BBI is basically just a clamor to change the constitution and not address real challenges that we have.
I think definitely. I mean, there are proposals and that will emerge that yes. Can address some of the challenging issues that Kenyans face. I think the more fundamental question is as I said, is one of inclusivity of the process that has led up to this, and where we go from now, because that will determine whether it's implemented. Because part of the reason we find ourselves in this conundrum right now is because we promulgated a constitution in 2010, and 10 years later, what we've done is actually undermine vital elements of that constitution. So how we bring to life what is on paper, those proposals that are made is very, very dependent on Kenyans being a lot more engaged, a lot more, the process being a lot more inclusive, for it to make a difference in our lives that is meaningful, and that people believe is credible and not there to serve the interests of a few. It's possible, and it's one of the things I feel sorry for this government for, because they do very many bad things. They do a lot of good things as well. And often the good is lost because of this environment of a lack of trust, a lack of credibility, a sense that a lack of authenticity that afflicts them, which can only be corrected by as major inclusivity, where you bring in the Kenyan people in a process that purports to
John,
be able to change the constitution in pretty fundamental ways.
Yeah, John, to what extent, because you alluded to the issue of state capture, there's a report that was published by AFRICOG last year that detailed this repurposing of state institutions for private means. David D has also spoken about the administration. In fact, David D puts it as Uhuru Kenyatta and the business enterprise.
He did what he always does. He personalized the issue.
He personalized. He said the Kenyatta business enterprise. Jeruga Dhangu talked about the Kenyatta dynasty. To what extent is this issue being addressed in the BBI, and to what extent would this enable or prevent a constitutional conference of the Ufungamano type?
I think it's a relevant issue, and I think it's not a personalization. By the way, I would push back on that, and the reason I'll push back on that is this: the Kenyatta family is not an ordinary family in our society. President Mzee Jomo Kenyatta was the founding father of Kenya. He's our first post-independence leader. He's the one who saw this country move from a colony into being an independent country, and that's significant, and it's something which we Africans everywhere take very seriously. Founding fathers are taken very seriously, so therefore this family is not treated like other families, and therefore the increasing concern about the tremendous conflict of interest, the major commercial interest, the commercial interests of the Kenyatta family are major, and Kenyatta is president, and therefore conflict of interest infects this administration to the point that yes, you have the kind of state capture that is being discussed in the report that was produced by AFRICOG last year. I think we're at an inflection point. This perfect storm leads us to an inflection point, ironically, just like the one that we had 30 years ago. And this is one of the issues that emerged in Limuru. For the Kenyatta family, the choice is very clear. Going forward, for the next 50 years, what will protect the family, its wealth, its best of all? A political deal that is made now, and then it's constitutionalized via maybe a referendum or through Parliament or BBI. Is that what will protect?
Are you saying, Mr. Githongo, that what this government has done is turn the country of Kenya into a corporate entity that can make them the maximum profit that is possible?
But at the same time, also, the question is, are we talking about that there's any threat to those interests?
Let's be frank. Our history since 1964 has been that you go into public service to get rich, not to serve the public. It's almost
was that always there from 1964, Mr. Githongo?
I don't think so. I mean, there were a lot of people who joined government in the 60s through the 70s, and even now there are a lot of public servants who do a job where they're actually serving the people, with all their energy and all.
But Mr. Githongo, consider, for instance, the salaries that MPs were paid in those days. Was it something that would attract anybody to go towards? Well,
I don't, one of the big, fallacies is that that a big salary improves, reduces corruption, improves governance.
No, it doesn't reduce corruption at all. But it makes an attractive proposal for anybody who wants to go into politics.
Yeah, but we're on the issue of state capital.
Yes, people don't go into politics. If you're going into politics to make money, then that is part of the reason we're in the crisis that we are in now.
But that's the mantra now. People
that is the thing. Yeah, and people go into politics
to make money.
Exactly. To raise their economic profile as an individual and to hope to spread that to their closest and dearest.
And then what you do, the next step from that is that you begin, and if you look at the range of miscellaneous amendments, acts that have been published since 2013, and if you look at the Gazette notices that have been published since 2013, you then begin to legalize that conflict of interest. You begin to, it's no longer a smash and grab kind of corruption that we saw in the 70s and 80s, but this is much more corporatized corruption. It leads to very stark inequalities in society, and that is very much the case here in Kenya. Now, when you have deep inequalities in a society like Kenya, inequality, rather than just poverty itself, inequality is much more easily politicized and militarized, and it's the reason Kenya, despite having regular elections, if you compare it to other countries in the region, has lost more economic growth in terms of where the GDP goes down because growth has been affected by a political process. Every time we have an election, basically businesses stop investing. They take a wait and see attitude. They're nervous about the process.
So John, the question was, the question was, does BBI give us? Is this a defining issue for BBI? The issue of state capital, or is it one of the battery of issues? And if it is, then can this conversation then be taken to an ufungamano type of conference?
I think the concern is whether BBI is is an instrument to constitutionalize state capture. That is a fear. And yes, a ufungamano process can unpackage that, can reverse that, can resist that. And I think it's essential because that's the concern. That with BBI, what is happening is a very sophisticated, in a way, way of constitutionalizing the conflict of interest and the state capture that has been described as attending to Kenya's governance environment right now.
John, as the architect, as one of the key architects of the anti-corruption infrastructure that we have in Kenya today, what did you miss? And I don't want to personalize. I know it was an administration, but you are the driving, at the front line of this. We have a very robust or very intricate anti-corruption framework. Did we miss the possibility of conflict of interests? Or what's gone wrong?
I'll just answer that with 2 points. Number one, the anti-corruption strategies that were adopted across many African countries, starting from really from the mid-1990s, where, all these countries where we have anti-corruption agencies, and we have economic crimes and anti-corruption laws, all that was implemented across many African countries as a result of IMF conditionalities in the 1990s. So, though externally driven to an extent, and very heavily focused on prosecution of corruption. And yes, so we did not focus enough on the integrity side of the fight against corruption. We focused on the prosecution side, which is the most difficult and the most even in developed countries, the most unsuccessful. It's prosecuting a large anti-corruption case that involves key politicians and key business people in a society takes a long time. It is very difficult, and it does not inspire public confidence. We didn't take enough. We didn't take seriously enough the integrity side, which is dealing with conflicts of interest. We had MPs and other public officials declaring their assets and liabilities and those of their families. Those measures were also part of our program, and perhaps we should have. I would say that for me was a big lesson. That's what we should have put at the front, and prosecution at the back. Number one. Number two, this is a lesson being learned around the world. And I'll give you an example. The World Economic Forum did a study a couple of years ago where they studied corruption in Italy, and they wondered how come for the past couple hundred years Italy has had the same governance infrastructure for the entire country, but there's a lot more corruption in southern Italy than northern Italy, and yet the institutions are the same. And I think it's an issue we focused, and I think it's important to focus on institutions and building institutions. They cost money, and you have to populate them, and etc. But it's also an issue of traditions and culture, and it's also about how do public officers behave. When we have public officials going into office and using that office in blatant ways, but also in very subtle ways to benefit themselves, their families, and their partners in commercial interest. That is far more damaging to the fabric of governance in a society like ours.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a few people who are doing very well, but we have a majority who are struggling. I mean, what COVID-19, for example, has shown us is the so-called middle class in Kenya, in which I would include all of us who are on this conversation, because we were able to get onto this call.
I am not in the middle class. I'm poor.
Oh, come on, Siti. Be careful what you say. It will come to be.
Yeah.
Ignore that statement.
But the fragility of this class,
Yeah.
and I think and that has been attenuated by the fact that there is a class that is political and commercial that has dominated power for a long time, and they're the ones now telling us, "Oh, we need to fix the constitution." So all these changes are happening in an environment of very low trust. So it doesn't matter, what BBI produces. It's very sad, because I think there will be some good proposals in there. As I said, even Jubilee has done.
But they may be lost with with
lost.
everything else. John, let's take another break, and we want to talk about what KPA now has. It's Captain Cargo. It's an information portal that has been rolled out by Kenya Ports Authority. You can access it. It's captaincargo.kpa.co.ke, or you just go to kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo, KARGO, looking at the various aspects that this portal is giving.
Right, so one of the things that we talk about often, and that was an issue, not less than 10 years ago at KPA, was loading and offloading of your cargo. It's going to take forever to get your stuff out. With the promise, from KPA on this portal, getting that information is that, for one, loading and offloading within 1 hour of the train's arrival at the ICDs, for example, whether that be in Naivasha I know you wanted to get your stuff to Muhoroni, TJ, CT,
the Kisumu port.
And then onto the Kisumu port. But okay, so if you were in a hurry to leave Naivasha, you can be assured that by the time the train reaches Naivasha, within an hour, your stuff will be off the train and you can go.
Whoa.
So the portal is using this as a way to spread this information. If you never heard it before, you heard it here first.
It's a big
off the
motivator.
portal.
It's like our commitment to you. And
1
you can hold us
hour?
accountable
Is
for
that
it.
even possible?
1
Yes.
hour of its arrival,
There's
loading
no
and
reason why it
offloading.
shouldn't be possible.
And then they'll deliver your containers
Just
within 5
streamlining
hours.
the processes, and it happens.
And they'll deliver your container within 5 hours of trucks gate in and gate out. Loading confirmed, direct delivery cargo within 2 hours of gate in. So when you get in the gate within 2 hours, it'll be done and dusted.
Truck on the way.
There you
Kabisa.
go.
We're having a conversation with John Gidongo. He is the CEO of Inuka Kenya Nisisi. Coming to the top of the hour, and we want to conclude our conversation with John Gidongo. John, an hour is a very short time, as you realize, when you're having a conversation of this nature. So I just want to give you now an opportunity to give your closing remarks, and also maybe you can introduce us to Inuka Kenya Nisisi and what you do.
Thank you very much. Well, I think that you put it very well. Kenya is facing a perfect storm. COVID-19, which is a health pandemic that's affecting the entire planet, has simply attenuated what was already a governance crisis for Kenya, and created the perfect storm that you're describing. I think now is the moment for Kenyans, all Kenyans of goodwill, because everyone is suffering, everyone is feeling the pain, to basically stand up and resist attempts to undermine this constitution, even if they're presented as ostensible attempts to improve it in some way or the other when it hasn't been implemented in the past. I think it's time for Kenyans to basically say, okay, do we want to slide back into a dictatorship, quasi-banana republic that is run for the profit of a few families, or do we want for this to be a country where every Kenyan who is born can live and actualize themselves, without concern that I don't belong to the right tribe, I don't belong to the right group, and therefore my future is set for me. If I am born in Marsabit, I shall never be A or B. If I'm born in Kiambu, I can and I support this particular group, my future is set for me. Unless we can deal with that, Kenya is stuck, and Kenyans are extraordinary people because they're resilient, they're hardworking, and they've suffered through these challenges before. This moment is special because we have the Constitution being undermined at the same time as a health pandemic and an economic crisis, which has been caused by the profligacy and corruption of this particular administration.
John, thank you very much. Thank you very much for all your words this morning. I mean, like I said, an hour is quite a short time. We'll invite you to come now into the studio now that kumefunguliwa, so that you can come now and we have this conversation face to face and one-on-one. Asante sana. We wish you a great day. Keep listening to the next hour, because in the next hour we'll be speaking to the Deputy Chief Registrar of the Judiciary. We are talking about fighting corruption through effective and efficient judicial systems. I'm sure that is something that would be interesting also to listen to. Thank you, John, and have a good day. It's 9 o'clock. Good morning.
Let's look at how things may have changed on the route this morning. So certain roads throughout the city, not much of an issue today. It looks really good, guys. Just a small issue in Westlands where a vehicle has blocked, and so traffic is affected right around School Lane. But apart from that, it looks really, really good. Don't have any issues with traffic as such this morning, except for the little hold up that we saw right around Limu Road. A few issues on Mombasa Road earlier, but it looks good, guys. Spice FM KE. If anything does change in a short while, do let us know what you see. But I predict that it'll look pretty good this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have CT.
To look at today's proverb by CT Muga. Remember, we are live streaming the show on www.spicefm.co.ke, and also we're live streaming the show on our social media handles, Spice FM KE, Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter. You can follow the conversation as well on Instagram, Spice FM KE. CT, before we talk about this riddle, what is today's proverb?
When you show the moon to a child, they only see your finger.
Okay, now let's come to this.
Yes.
Nikiwa ndani unapiga kelele, nikitoka nje unanungunika.
Hapana. Nikiwa nje, when I'm outside, I am safe. When I am inside, I am not safe. Can I just go
Less
ahead
safe.
and... I am not safe.
Okay.
Or less safe. Can I
No
go
longer
ahead?
safe.
No longer safe. Can I go ahead and...
So the issue is COVID. The answer is COVID.
Yeah, it's to
The
do
answer
with
is-
COVID.
No, the
It's
answer
to-
is COVID.
No, the answer, it's to do with COVID. It's to do with the statement that was in the paper.
What is that statement?
Today, and it has to do with air.
Just give us a statement. Let's try one last time.
No,
before-
if I give you the
What's a
statement,
state-
it's over.
Yeah. At least we'll have won something.
What? Yeah.
Is
Is there any other attempt? No other attempt.
Give the statement.
Okay. The CS of Transport has opened up air travel. We will be forced to social distance outside the airport. We will not social distance in the aeroplane because it is too expensive. So I am safe as long as I'm social distancing. This is what has been drilled in my head. When I get onto the plane, I don't social distance. And my question then is,
Logic.
where are we as vis-a-vis COVID? So it's about air travel. I didn't actually think it was that difficult, but my question is, why? Is this okay? Should I be feeling safe to travel without social distancing when I've been told it's all about
And by the way,
social
this is not unique to Kenya. It's across the globe. This is what's happening at airports. There's a lot of time that's being taken to board a plane because you must observe physical distancing when you're boarding a plane. This sector of the plane is boarding now, and then we disinfect and you board, and then all of you go into the same flight, which is
You're sitting
at
within
least
inches of each other.
80,
The plane is
80% full.
disinfected.
Oh, okay. All right.
And you've been
For the next
tested.
8 hours when you're in this space.
That plane is disinfected properly.
And you've been tested. Everyone on a plane has
And
to
they
be...
do what they are interesting because
Mm.
they do what they're
You must
calling
present-
Not tested,
within
screened.
these-
No.
What's the
within the
difference?
cabin. They're doing what they
many
call
of
a
the airlines-
recirculation of the air over and over again. I'm just telling you what they said. Don't look at me
Kizungu
like
that is not helping my life because I have been told, WHO has
sorry.
told us, distancing.
Yeah.
So everyone needs to be tested. It's the presumption that everybody who gets onto the plane
Remember,
doesn't have COVID.
This matter of confined space is something WHO is still debating. They are not conclusive on that subject. They are conclusive on the issue of the unlikelihood of getting infected if you are outside. That one they're conclusive about. But inside, They're not conclusive. They just said you need to be careful on things. So long as there's that window, the airlines are not abrogating any hard and fast rule that has been laid out in the public domain.
Okay. It's a subject of a conversation.
A big one. This one.
Yes.
It's a big conversation that keeps. The first time that we saw this, I mean, airlines saying, for you to board onto this plane, you must present a COVID-19 negative certificate. That's a recent one, and then you must observe physical distancing while at the airport. And when you get onto the plane, that story changes. I agree with you. I mean,
if they're asking for such a certificate, why don't they just ask for your marriage certificate and birth certificate?
everything, right?
Well, they're at
Yes.
it.
Yeah, and then certificate is what? Is you've been tested within
Within
a certain
48 hours.
Within
Within
48
the last
hours.
48 hours.
And you tested negative.
Yeah. So that's 48 hours you test, don't go randa-randaing.
Okay.
Yep.
Eric.
Kwani Eric is on.
No, I want before
What
this
is she
thing-
implying?
I don't know,
We'll move
Eric.
on.
No.
What
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
people do and
That
talk
one,
about?
That one.
Okay, let's talk
our
about.
guest is going to
Let's
feel
talk about
like
fighting
sorry.
corruption.
we are ignoring him completely and just chatting about
And
our
we were
issues.
so that he settled down,
Yes.
right? Because we'd like him to settle in and be comfortable, and so that we can start the conversation. We're talking about fighting corruption through effective and efficient judicial systems. And joining us on the in the studio in the hot seat is Paul Ndemo. He's the Deputy Chief Registrar of the Judiciary. We'll also be having a conversation with Philip Kagushia, as Assistant Director of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. And also we'll bring in another person, a third person into the conversation as well. I mean, we have to make sure that we cover this in a 360. But let's start with a guest in the studio. Paul, good morning.
Good morning.
It's the first time that we're in the show today that we're having a guest called anything less than and other than John. So
This morning.
right. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you for having me here.
You guys at the judiciary have your work cut out on very many fronts.
Yes.
Today, we'd like to ask you very many things, but we'll try and basically just contain ourselves to the
and
conversation.
limit the politics.
Have no politics.
just about the fight against corruption. And also on the line is Philip Kagushia. He's the Assistant Director of ESCC. He speaks to us often. Philip, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Situation Room as well.
Thank you for having me back.
Now, to actually bring the context of this conversation to everybody, I'll ask you this question, Philip. What is the significance of tomorrow and tomorrow's date, the 11th day of July?
All right. Well, we are celebrating the African Anti-Corruption Day.
Yep.
And for those who are not aware, is that this is under the auspices of the African Union. As you may be aware, the African Union has its own regional treaty, the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption. And one of the main focuses is the Africa that we want. This is the kind of environment we want to live in. And what we do on the Anti-Corruption Day is we take stock of what we have managed to do in the intervening period. So just to reiterate, this is the fourth installment. This is the fourth edition of the African Anti-Corruption Day, and today we'll be taking stock of what we've done, and the focus is fighting corruption through efficient and effective judicial systems, and that is why we have my good friend Paul Ndemo there.
Indeed, that's why we have him here, so that he can take the punches direct, even on your behalf. Even on your behalf. Paul and Philip, we've seen the journey towards fighting corruption and the kind of wins that the war against corruption has had in the last couple of months. This year specifically, we've seen just good news coming out of the judiciary. But the conversation has always been, when the cases for corruption are taken to court, it takes forever.
The court is a bottleneck.
The court is the bottleneck, is the one that is a hindrance to this fight against corruption. What do you have to say about that?
Okay, thank you. That's a very good question. I think first we need to appreciate the context of corruption cases. A corruption case is not your typical type of case. It is not. Typically, you would have a case that has got a lot of documentation. You have got several, if not many, people who are involved in the charges. You've got a good number of lawyers representing persons charged with criminal cases, specifically the corruption cases. And so that has to be factored in when you are looking at the overall picture of access to justice and the rights of an accused person. So when you would expect where you have cases with multiple number of lawyers, it would not take the same amount of time, and with the complexity I've talked about in terms of documentation, process, it is not the same like an ordinary case. If you're to have an ordinary case where you have to prove something simple, like, just simple theft, a breaking into a house, for example, you probably just need 2 witnesses to come to court, the complainant and maybe the police officer and one other person, just to show that this happened. But if it is an economic crime, you have to have the whole transaction, so you have to look at when did this begin, who signed off these papers, who benefited from these amounts of money, bring in the experts to show, maybe handwriting experts. So by the time you have a case like that, you're talking, at a minimum, maybe 9-10 witnesses, and this can go up to even 100. We have some cases right now with over 100 witnesses. So you can imagine the length of time, the complexity. You have got 10, 20 advocates. Each of them is representing these people. You will not take the same time, honestly, with an ordinary type of case.
Actually, remember the Chief Justice at one point raising this issue and saying, so you're bringing cases to court. You have one case, you're charging 5 people. Each of those 5 people brings in 2 lawyers. Each of those people has X number of witnesses. This case doesn't move. So what's the solution to this?
Well, first, we must appreciate that everybody has a right to representation. Our law is very clear that you are presumed innocent until proven guilty. So the way you conduct your defense as an accused person is your right. The way the case is going to be prosecuted, again, is determined by the DPP. And so sitting where we do sit as the judiciary, we sit as an umpire that is impartial. You bring your case, we hear what you have presented before us, and then we make a determination. So in terms of how to manage that type of case, to a very large extent is left to the agencies that are now bringing that particular case before you, because you sit here and wait for the presentation. But that said, we have improved work methods in terms of ensuring that, for example, before a case begins, we have what we call pre-trial sessions. And this is a new introduction. A pre-trial session basically just means all the lawyers come together, all the parties come into the case before the presiding judicial officer. You then now look at your level of preparedness for the actual case. Because what used to happen before is you would have a hearing date given. So you say the person takes plea today, then you're told your hearing is going to happen on the 15th of August, for example. You come on the 15th of August, and then the parties say, oh, we have not received this document, or we have not yet, I've not yet gotten a lawyer to represent me, or this and this has not, hasn't happened. But as it is now with a pre-trial conference, you come to the presiding judicial officer, the magistrate. You talk about how many witnesses do you intend to bring? Have you gotten all the documentation that you need for your case? Are you ready to proceed? And so that minimizes the time of the trial, so that you deal with the preliminary issues before now you go to the substantive trial.
So most recently we saw now, you talked about the time, because we were looking, even with judgments that we've seen recently, you were looking at 10-15 years for anything like this to come out, right? Now with the most recent ruling that we've seen, they've been given two years to say that such cases must be tried, prosecuted, done. So are we saying that now with what you've talked about, like the pre-trial conferences and such, would then aid all this entire process then to be compacted into 2 years? Is that one of the things that would help?
That certainly would help, but it has to be one amongst other measures. So, for example, there needs to be capacity in terms of just the sheer human resource, and because we have many cases. So, if you have more magistrates handling cases like we have done, the Chief Justice asked. Now we have 9 magistrates for Nairobi alone, just listening to corruption cases. So if you have an increase in that sort of, that area, then you expect that to also help.
Right.
So it is that, but the other agencies here that my friend Philip is representing, and the DPP and others, there's also some responsibility on their end. So it is not just that if we have the pre-trial, then this is guaranteed. Yeah, and other things like electronic. Moving into electronic sort of hearings and just processes, which we are doing right now as the judiciary. So those concerted efforts will help to ensure that these cases come down.
So we have heard what the judiciary is doing. Now we'd like to hear what these other agencies are doing.
Yeah.
And Philip Kagushi, Assistant Director of Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. After this short break, we'll also introduce an Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions, Alexander Muteti, who's also joining us on the line. So these 2 gentlemen are on the line, and Paul Ndemo, who is the Deputy Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, is in the studio. We are discussing the fight against corruption. So let's take a quick break, take a look at the weather, and then we ask the hard questions to the gentlemen on the phone. Guys on the phone, be ready. It's coming to you. Coming.
Okay, so in Nairobi, we'll still see some partly cloudy conditions for most of the day. It's still forecasted for rain in the afternoon, highs of 23. And in Njeri, highs of 22 with partly cloudy conditions. Nakuru will see highs of 23 with rainy conditions this afternoon, well into the weekend. Eldoret experiencing thunderstorms later with highs of 21 and lows of 12. In Kisumu, we'll see highs of 26 with 18 as the low, with showers and thunderstorms throughout the evening. It's partly cloudy in Kakamega, highs of 23 today and lows of 15 with rain showers in the afternoon. It'll be partly cloudy in Malindi through the day with highs of 28 and lows of 24. Mombasa will see highs of 28 and lows of 23 with mostly sunny conditions throughout today. Taking a step out in Kampala, thunderstorms are forecasted for the afternoon with highs of 24 and lows of 18. Rain showers expected in Dar es Salaam. Mostly cloudy conditions with highs of 27 and lows of 22. And in Johannesburg, further down south, it's 8 degrees, highs of 18 and lows of 8. With mostly cloudy conditions through most of the day. Lagos, Nigeria will be cloudy today for most parts of today. Showers expected to start anytime now. Highs of 29 and lows of 23. In New York, around about 2 a.m. on a Friday, we will see partly cloudy conditions for most of the day. Highs of 26 and lows of 23 with showers coming in later in the afternoon. On to London, where at 13 degrees is partly cloudy. Will remain that day for most of the day. Highs of 20, highs of 19 and lows of 11. And we'll wrap things up in Paris, where at 18 degrees it's cloudy, highs of 23 and lows of 12.
Tomorrow is Africa Anti-Corruption Day, and we're having the Fight Against Corruption conversation this morning. In the studio is Paul Ndemo, Deputy Chief Registrar of the Judiciary. On the phone lines is Philip Kagushia, the Assistant Director of Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, as well as Alexander Muteti, who's an Assistant Director in the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Alexander, good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to the Situation Room. We've heard what Paul was saying in terms of what the judiciary has done to try and address the issue of the backlogs and the time it takes to address cases that are taken before them. And the people who take the cases before them are you, Alex.
Yes, please.
So what are you doing also now to help speed up these cases?
Let me share this. The DPP has created an economic crimes department, which is a fully dedicated team of not less than 20 prosecutors who are tasked with dealing with issues of economic crimes and anti-corruption matters. So we have a standby team in Nairobi alone that can be able to handle these cases whenever they come from. Now, one important thing about creating the teams is to ensure that we do situations where a case has got to be adjourned because the prosecutor handling the matter is not available. So that way, we are also going to be able to ensure that adjournments are not actually brought about by our own non-appearance in court. So that's a major step to ensure that cases do not collapse whenever they are set down for hearing. Now, to fast-track the cases, the DPP is very firm and he has given strict instructions. When we take dates, we make sure we do this back-to-back so that you have a matter running. If it's, say, this week, you can fix it for the entire week and make sure that you line up your witnesses. Now, we have created synergies between ourselves and the EACC, and my lion friend who confirmed, Mr. Kagusha. We are working together very closely to ensure that if it's a preparation of witnesses, that is done in good time. Service of documents is done in good time so that we don't again have to adjourn a case because witnesses are not available or certain documents have not been served. Now, you did also ask about the numbers that we are presenting in court. To ensure also these cases do not take too long, we have embarked on a continuous review of all the cases that we have so that we ensure in situations where you can minimize on the number of witnesses that you have to call but still prove your case, then that is done. So that is yet another step that we are taking, and it is helping because the moment you determine your key witnesses and you reduce the numbers, then it will definitely mean that you take a shorter period of time. Further,
Mr. Muteti,
yes.
Sorry to cut in. 1 hour is a short time. We have many burning questions.
Yes.
There is a concern that the war on corruption matters. We are seeing some very good progress and we are happy about that. There is a concern that it's being weaponized for political gains in terms of targeting certain people who are not within the right political alignment. Like Moi used to say, siasa mbaya, maisha mbaya. What would you say to that? How do you select the cases that you pick? Because we know we are losing about 800 B in terms of corruption. The Auditor General, or rather we are not able to account for about 800 B of the budget by Auditor General reports, which means we have a lot of corruption. How are you selecting cases to ensure you then don't delegitimize your work by appearing to be pursuing a political agenda?
Thank you for that question. I want to assure Kenyans and every listener today that in making our prosecutorial decision, we are guided by two major things. The first one is the evidence that is available, and that is the key consideration before you look at anything else. Then the second consideration is the public interest in prosecuting that case. Now, I really wonder when I hear the story about weaponization and targeting certain people. For instance, if you look at the cases that we have presented, and this DPP has said enough times, we do not choose who is to be investigated. That is the job of the investigator. We do not choose the persons to prosecute. That comes out of the evidence that we have. So that in situations where we will get, say, for example, one corporation, and you find so many people coming from the same ethnic group, if by sheer accident they are all implicated, it is not our business to start saying, okay, we are going to leave this one so that we don't look like we are targeting a particular group. The fact is, when you look at economic crimes, the nature of economic crimes is such that it is so complex and involves so many players. You may end up picking an entire, say, department or section in a corporation. And that cannot be then said to be weaponizing it or targeting a particular group of people. If the investigators present as evidence, we just work with that.
Okay. Philip, coming to you on this one, Paul had mentioned that if we're looking at bringing forth cases of corruption and having dealt with those cases within a time period of 2 years, then some responsibility then does fall on agencies such as the EACC, such as the ODPP. So from your point of view, what then in terms of extra needs to be done to make sure all that needs to be done is brought forth and these things actually done in this period of time?
All right. Well, before I answer that, I'd like to comment on this issue of weaponization because it is a recurring theme. And I think my landed senior, Mr. Muteti, who I used to work with in Mombasa, has said the right thing. You know, his office and the Director of Public Prosecution do not select cases for investigation. That responsibility falls under EACC. So EACC is the right person to be asking whether the war against corruption is being weaponized so that I can give you a comprehensive answer.
Is it?
Now,
Is it?
yes. And the answer is absolutely.
It is?
And the best, no, it's not. And the best example I can give you is please look at the, say, high-profile people who have been charged. Specifically look at the governors. And if you look at the counties where the governors have been charged, you'll see that they fall in different, political leanings. So there is no question of it being weaponized. Again, we also have a criteria for conducting investigations. And one of the criteria is the high value of the subject matter, the profile of the people involved, and the public interest. So when those things are put together, it does not matter whether the person who is involved comes from one political dispensation or another. So that's that about weaponization, and I hope that the listeners have understood. The second issue is about what EACC as an investigator should be doing to help, the cases be concluded more efficiently. And I agree. There's a responsibility on EACC because EACC is the one which does the witnesses, it bonds the witnesses. So Mr. Muteti is right, it is our responsibility, and we have endeavored to do that. The other one is bringing the evidence to court because we are the custodians of the documents until you hand them over to the prosecutor. Now, as we commemorate the 4th Anti-Corruption African Anti-Corruption Day, one of the key elements is to enhance multi-agency teamwork. That is why I am here today with my friend Muteti. And one of the things we have done is we have onboarded the officers from the Office of the Director of Prosecution a bit early so that they can guide us before we finish preparing the report. We don't want a back and forth between our office and their office. And what you will realize is that our concurrence rate about which cases to prosecute is over 90%. That is why you're seeing a surge in high-profile prosecutions, high-profile convictions, and high-value recoveries.
So then coming back to you on this, just what Philip has said, Paul, if there's concurrence between the two agencies, right, and if we go back to what would have been the initial sentiment that the judiciary is the bottleneck, has that element then been removed?
The fact that we are actually on this show together is testament to the truth that we are part of one team. We actually are in a team called the Kenya Leadership Integrity Forum. That Kenya Leadership Integrity Forum works together, bringing together the different players in the fight against corruption. So you have the investigator, you have the prosecutor, judiciary, we have county governments, media, education, the whole spectrum of those people. And so the issue about whether or not judiciary is the bottleneck, therefore cannot arise, because this is a team effort. We are on one team fighting corruption. Every agency has got its own part of the responsibility. So you do your part, you move it to the next agency, you move from that agency, take it to the next. But forums such as this now, and where we meet as that integrity forum, is just to discuss how do we move this war together. So we respect each other's mandates, and so everybody is just doing their bit. But it's not a correct perspective that judiciary really is a bottleneck, because judiciary as part of the team will work with what is given to it as an independent arbiter.
So are you saying that the entire judiciary is a corruption-free zone, and that every judicial officer is beyond reproach?
I do not think there is any place in society where you have everybody beyond reproach. And I don't think so. I mean, by and large, we have got very many dedicated officers in the judiciary. We have got, the vast majority of officers are dedicated, staff are given to that. But obviously, just like in any other sector or place, you have one or two rotten apples. But there is high commitment. We have got internal mechanisms for ensuring that there is a measure of accountability, from the officers and staff. And so, I mean, I cannot purport to sit here and say that we are 100% perfect. That's not true.
So let's time for another break to take a look at traffic, and then we come back and discuss this. Or did you do traffic? No, you didn't do traffic. Why are you looking at me like, what am I talking about? Got me confused for a bit there.
She does that all the time.
There's a judicial officer in the house. I'll report all of you.
We have the investigator, the prosecutor, and the judiciary right here. When we come out of this break, we will now talk about how you ensure that these three institutions, the EACC, the ODPP, and the judiciary, are not infiltrated by corruption, as we are fighting corruption in the public domain. Good morning. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We are speaking with Paul Ndemo, Deputy Chief Registrar of the Judiciary. On the line is Paul Kagushi, Assistant Director of the EACC, and Alexander Muteti, Assistant Director in the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Good morning.
And it is actually looking really good around Nairobi today, coming off of Mombasa Road and getting into the CBD via the Nyayo Stadium roundabout and then Huru Highway on that area is actually looking pretty good. It's where you would see some issues around about this time. Coming off Figure Road then and getting into the CBD also looking much better. So not much of an issue today whatsoever. It would be great if most days were like this, don't you think? I think so too. We're likely to see heightened levels of traffic though in the evening as we get into the weekend. But for now, it's looking pretty good.
Traffic.
Fighting corruption is a conversation we're having this morning, and just as we went to the break, we were talking about corruption itself infiltrating the corridors of justice. So I'll start with you, Philip Kagushi at the EACC, and then Alexander Muteti, and then coming to Paul. In the organizations, how do you safeguard the officers working on these cases against being corrupted?
Yeah, that's a very good observation. And ideally, every institution which is dealing with this kind of cases should on internal affairs. So for the EACC, we do quite a lot of random integrity verification. And as Paul Ndemo said, you see, corruption affects us as a Kenyan society. So there will always be some element of that corruption creeping into any institution. That is because we are Kenyans and we draw staff from all parts of Kenya, which means we draw staff from all kinds of people. So the integrity testing, integrity verification is one of the measures we have been taking. And I think if you talk to Mr. Mutete and Mr. Ndemo, they probably have their own internal mechanisms. And this is what at least prevents the rotten apple, because there's a concept about a rotten apple transforming into a rotten barrel of apples. And if it is not checked, it can become a rotten orchard. So that is what we are doing. We have internal integrity verification mechanisms.
Right. Thank you so much. This issue of rotten apples, before I get to my question, Chris Rock has a very interesting anecdote concerning bad apples, where he asks...
Who is Chris Rock?
He's a comedian.
He's a rock star.
He's a rock star.
He's a comedian.
Yes, he's a comedian. And let me tell you,
Not in Kenya.
not in Kenya. But he talks about rotten apples because he says, he was looking at America, where they have several rotten apples in the police force and they keep killing black people. And he asks, if you were to fly on an aeroplane with an airline that has a few rotten apples, some of the pilots aren't able to land the planes, but most of them are. Would you fly with that airline? So this issue of rotten apples really is scapegoatism. That's what he was saying. Anyway, to my point, and I'll take maybe a wider view in terms of what, as the public, we expect to see. And I'll direct this, I think, across the board, but maybe mainly to the EACC, to the DPP. We were talking to John Githongo, who said the prosecution is the blunt side of the war against corruption. Ethics really is one of the key things. He also mentioned the issue of state capture. And we saw in South Africa when the president and this Gupta family were cited in an issue of state capture. I actually did some checking. The investigations were launched in 2016. By 2018, the president had to step down. Of course, we know they have a different political system, but the issue of state capture was taken very, very seriously, and it's even used in the press. Now, in Kenya, we actually have a report that has cited state capture. I know David D has also put forward some issues. There have been some investigative pieces talking about state capture, conflict of interest, where the first family has been cited as using their position to get favor in some cases. There were some tax write-offs. In the dairy industry, there was some,
Has he taken this matter to court?
In the dairy industry, there were some regulations that they were defeated because of a public outcry. There are issues around, several aspects that are alluding to a high level of state capture. So what are we talking about when we have, for instance, EACC not really picking up the issue of state capture? And are there laws that deal with conflict of interest? And what can we expect to come out? Because unless we are saying that, the president
did he take this matter to court?
Unless we are saying the president is above the law or the family's president, shouldn't there be investigation when issues are brought up, ethical issues?
Okay, let's actually start that question from the investigator.
Yes.
How would you commence such an investigation? Do you require, for example, someone like David D, who's making these public allegations, to come to you and report so that you can have something with which to start an investigation?
All right, thank you. The source of information for investigation for EACC comes from various points. As you said, majority is reports. Some of them actually come from you, our partners in the media, but there are also cases where we can investigate of our own motion, and that is within the Constitution. And Article 252 says can commence investigation of its own motion. So it is not necessary that somebody like Nduh would have to prepare a report that we'd look at and then commence the investigation. So we can do that on our own. That is what we probably call intelligence-led investigations. The issue of, taxes? I'm sure you're all aware that if there's a tax issue, one of our multi-agency task force partners, the KRA, is the responsible body for that issue. And it's only when there is evidence that there is either tax evasion or any other offense related to taxes that it comes to EACC as an economic crime. And that is why you saw 1 week ago, we had a KRA officer taken to court because of failing to pay taxes, about 34 million. And also we sued him for unexplained assets, about 590 million. So I think in terms of where we commence our investigations, we have numerous ways, and it's not limited to reports.
Right, Philip. So just my question on conflict of interest.
Yes.
Because conflict of interest can be proffered through tax exemptions. So is the ACC, under our laws, is conflict of interest in the purview of, the EACC?
Absolutely. That is within the Act, that's the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act. There is a specific offense for conflict of interest where you confer a benefit to yourself or to another person. So it is in our purview, but what we are doing, which is going a step further, is we are working on a conflict of interest bill. And this is one of the reasons why, as we commemorate this Anti-Corruption Day, and we have an aspect of it of enjoining the public, we are asking the public, when you're selecting those MPs who go and become legislators, elect people of integrity, so that when you come up with a bill like that, let it be passed in Parliament, so that we're given the tools to deal with those issues.
Philip,
it's about the tools.
Philip, please don't throw it back to the citizens, because there are these clearance certificates that were given by your institution, I think the DPP, I don't know, I can't remember how many, that
As a
missed
requirement
it.
to run for public office.
That missed it. And actually, you'd have done us a great service if that process was robust. So
and I'd like to answer that. I'd like to answer that right away. That issue of the clearance certificates. Are you aware that there was a matter that went to court about whether people for elective office should be barred?
Yep.
Yeah, there was a decision, and that's a decision from an independent arm of the government of this country. So, in as much as EACC can make recommendations and put a list of, say, 100 people and say, we have issues with these people, there is a court decision which has not been overturned, which talks about whether or not those people should be allowed to run. And it still boils down. And let me finish. I am not sure I'm happy with the suggestion that we are throwing it back to the citizens. We are all citizens, you included.
Yes,
Okay?
I am. And my next question is on the same issue, under the Integrity Alliance. Is there scope for stronger cooperation between the EACC and non-state stakeholders to give force to those vetting mechanisms? Because if somebody can't be barred in court, then presumably those certificates can be used sold to the public. And the public can then bar somebody. Do you see what I'm saying? How do we deal with the culture?
The citizen has a clear role here, I think, even before they answer. Look, it doesn't matter who has cleared whom. Who is going to the ballot to elect this person? And I agree with when Philip is saying, if the citizen is okay with a certain leader, it doesn't matter how many kind of, knees you have put in them.
Yeah, the point I was making...
Even if you've missed all these steps, even if they pass through the sieve, the final sieve is the voter.
Agreed, but the point I was making is in 2017, they were cleared at that level. So they got the certificates and they were able to get the nomination.
Yep.
And the question I'm
not
asking
sure that is. I'm not sure that is factual. That is not factual.
He's contesting that. Why do you contest that, Philip?
I am not sure that is factual. One, let us understand each other. We do clearance for all sorts of people who are seeking public office. But what it is this. you do a self-declaration, okay? And inside the self-declaration, there's even a portion which says, have you ever been charged? Have you ever been prosecuted? And so on and so forth. Now, within our system, if we have an integrity issue against a specific candidate, we will make that known to the people who will be officiating the elections and so on and so forth. But we do not issue a certificate, because think about it this way. Supposing Latiff wants to become the MD KPA, because I think there's a vacancy right now, and I give him a clearance certificate. What happens when he starts stealing tomorrow? You understand? So the point of this self-declaration is simply so that when he applies for the job at KPA, KPA can call us and ask us, do you have an issue with Eric Latiff? And you're like, either yes or no. And that is how he will proceed to the next stage.
So it's basically he's looking at the records. And you cannot say, just because I've heard out there that Wanjiru does not have integrity, I cannot therefore now just come and put it here and say, no, because I have heard out here.
You're also taking a very legalistic approach, because the principle of it was supposed to be supposed to be that these institutions were supposed to give a kind of to say, yes, this person can legitimately run.
But
they
based
don't
on
have,
what?
No, they were based on criteria. By the way, initially there were criteria put. So what I'd expect to come from Philip is to say, this is legally problematic. We still have a problem with this accountability, and this is what we are doing. Because maybe it's something that needs to be dealt with from a point of view of culture, and that the law, properly speaking, can help us.
Alex wants to...
Exactly. I would like to address that before I allow Mr. Muteti to come on. The act that deals with that, if you look at the Constitution, Article 79 establishes the EACC, and Article 80 says Parliament shall enact a legislation for the administration of this chapter, that is Chapter 6 on leadership and integrity. And that act is called the Leadership and Integrity Act. Now, anybody who has critically looked at that piece of legislation will tell you where it has strengths and where it has weaknesses, and the people who ensured it has those weaknesses are well known to everybody who is listening.
Agreed. That's why I also get a little bit concerned
it's
when
the
we
people
talk
that you
about
elected,
state
and that's why Alex started by saying, if you elect people with integrity, then they'll ensure that this law has more of the strengths and less of the weaknesses.
I agree with you. Let's get people of integrity onto the ballot.
And Let's hear from Alex, because Alex wanted to comment on this before you come in, because I think Alex wanted to react to something that you had said earlier. Alex Muteti.
Yes, you posed a very specific question on conflict of interest and whether we have a provision for that in our law. If you look at the Leadership and Integrity Act, sections 15 and 16, the law is very, very clear on the question of conflict of interest. So that where we have a case where somebody has evidence of conflict of interest on any public official, nothing prevents them from sharing that with the investigative agencies or even the DPP. And we shall direct in appropriate cases that those matters be investigated and prosecuted at the end of the day. Perhaps just to lend support to my friend, Mr. Kabusha, when you put in people in high places like Parliament and you are not very careful about their integrity, then you put us in a problem, because you will get laws that protect the very same class of persons. And that is problematic, because if you look at, for example, today, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Act, how did we end up with Section 62 saying, even after you have secured a conviction against a sitting member of Parliament, he continues to sit in Parliament until he exhausts his appeal? Now, that is precisely the point I think my lion friend is trying to bring out. And people need to be careful whom we put into offices in terms of elections.
Yes, agreed, Mr. Muteti. Thank you.
Good point.
I am on board of that agenda. Yes. It's not, the law won't solve our social culture. Yeah, we need both, and that's what we need to get around.
Taking a quick break as we have this conversation, we're going to remind you about the portal, the KPA portal. This is Captain Cargo, Captain KA It's a portal that gives you information about everything KPA, from what you need to know when you're importing, when you're exporting, the processes, the tariffs on the portal as well.
Well, there you go. I mean, so then even in terms of information, whereby you'd have to wait many days previously to get things done, spreading the information that, takes as little as 30 minutes upon admission, or rather upon submission of orders or pre-advices, and then always available for correspondence between from email to phone, and letting you know that is available now. I mean, this is a great way to let people know that, this is what is happening now, and they're always ready to answer questions or queries that might come up.
Eight minutes to 10. This is a Situation Room. The conversation continues. In the room, we have Paul Ndemo, Deputy Chief Registrar of the Judiciary. And just coming straight into Paul, you talked about what the judiciary is doing to ensure that, we speed up the cases against corruption. There's a proposal in Parliament, the Miscellaneous Amendment Bill, that's talking about amending the law to have a clause that says corruption cases shall be dispensed with within.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station, bringing you the best mix of the best music ever.
Do you have the resources? Do you have the courts? Do you have the judges? The magistrates?
So, as I mentioned earlier, we have been working with what we have. Currently in Nairobi alone, we've got 9 officers who are dedicated full-time to make sure that corruption cases are dealt with, continuously. So we do not have breaks. You take a few dates here and then in the next 3 months, they are continuous. So that is one strategy that we have adopted.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we could do with more numbers. We actually need more numbers for us to be able to attain that very lofty goal. And that, of course, comes now with issues about resourcing. But with that, there is a very dedicated team that is at hand to do its job and make sure that cases are prosecuted within the very short time. And if I may just make a comment on what was being discussed before, you have seen the court coming out very boldly to pronounce itself on matters related to corruption.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not as though there is no commitment. There is commitment, there is dedication, and issues to do with unexplained wealth. The court has pronounced itself. The issue of elected officials being charged in court, the court has pronounced itself on that. So for us, it's really just a matter of increasing the capacity with increased resources, increase the numbers, increase the courts that we have. We will be able, without doubt, to be able to work within those particular timelines that are being proposed.
Would you say that of the cases that are brought before our court system, judicial system,
yes,
that a large number of these cases do not have the requisite evidence? Or would you say that that is just a drop in the ocean, that most of the cases brought before the judiciary actually meet the threshold that is required for you to proceed?
I think if you look at statistics don't lie. So I think data probably would speak to this. If you look at the last 2 years, the cases that have come to court, and maybe Mr. Muteti and Kagushe can confirm this, there have actually been more convictions than acquittals. So, in fact, it should be maybe 60% convictions versus, 40% or thereabout acquittals.
Mm-hmm.
And so that argument would be dependent now on what is it that has been presented to court. So the court, just sitting as an independent arbiter, receives that information, but the data is clear. It shows in the last financial year, I think it was 60-something%. This financial year, right up to March, again, in terms of the cases filed, we had more convictions than acquittals. Because as a judiciary, we look both sides. Justice looks both sides, on the accused person and on the prosecutor. And we have to make a decision now based on the evidence and the law that is there.
Mr. Muteti, I want to come to you, and because there's something that you've alluded to, and we know, of course, with recent happening. So looking at the law as it is, and then looking at the spirit and letter of the Constitution, what would you say about this clause that says that a leader, even when somebody is found guilty by a lower court, they have to stay in office until they exhaust all avenues of appeal?
Our position as an office is this, that once you are charged, and take very simple example, every public official, say a clerk who steals a pen in the office, immediately they are asked to step aside. So we agree with the position that the courts have taken in some of these matters. That should be the proper position. Now, regarding people remaining in office as they exhaust their right of appeal, that is ridiculous, and we must have a change of this law. Why? Because if you let them sit in those offices, they still continue earning from public coffers, the very same public that they are accused of having swindled or having committed, economic crimes against. So we must wake up to the realization that Chapter 6 cannot be given effect without the necessary legislative amendments in all other laws. Because the Constitution prescribes what are the values. But then it is the legislation that we have that should reflect exactly what should happen when these people are tried. And our position is they must vacate office.
All right, thank you very much. We're coming to the end of the show, and as we prepare to commemorate tomorrow's Africa Day of,
Anti-corruption.
The Africa Day of Anti-Corruption, right? We'd like to give an opportunity to each one of you to just give us your reflections and your closing remarks. I'll start with you, Philip Kagushia, as Assistant Director of EACC.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, this is an opportunity for us to take stock of what has been achieved in the recent past. And it is evident that we have made huge strides, and that is why we keep mentioning the high-profile prosecutions and convictions, and that is a good thing. The other issue is to enhance our multi-agency task force approach. We're trying to streamline our processes so that our turnaround time is quicker, and that way we will probably see cases being resolved much faster. The final thing I'd like to say is that there is an objective here to talk to the public and the listeners and the people who are listening and sort of sensitize them on their role in the fight against corruption, because as somebody rightly said, there's a legal aspect, but there's also the social and cultural aspect, which I think even Mr. John Ivongo alluded to before. So those are the things we try to bring to the attention of Kenyans.
Thank you, Mr. Kagushia. Alexander Muteti.
Yes, for my part, I would say this. I think this is the right time when Kenyans now stood firm, supported the institutions that are engaged in the fight against corruption. And this support should come in many forms. First of all, let us look at, speaking for my office, for example, look at the resourcing in terms of how do we balance the resourcing of these officers. You cannot super-resource one agency and underfund others, and you expect that work is going to, to be done normally and everybody will be happy. So we need to address all the capacity constraints in all the agencies. If it is in terms of infrastructure, let us give them sufficient support so that at the end of the day, there will be no excuses. No one will be able to say, I was late for court because it was raining and I did not have a car to take me to court. I mean, that is what Kenyans must reflect on.
Thank you. And Paul?
For us, the judiciary is committed to continue determining cases, whether big or small, and we have shown that independently and fairly. That is very key for us. And secondly, we are also very keen to ensure that the enablers of justice are strengthened. And for us, we look at ICT. Just 1 week ago, exactly today, the Chief Justice launched e-filing for the entire county of Nairobi. And we are looking at rolling that out to the rest of the country. This will help to have faster dispensation of justice and just minimize issues of corruption. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room this week. It's Friday, so say goodbye for the Friday. say goodbye. For
Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. We'll keep discussing these issues as important as they are in the next coming days.
Jienjoini.
City. So say goodbye with today's proverb.
Today's proverb: when you show the moon to a child, they only see your finger. It's a Zambian saying. When you talk about loans and grants to a poor person, they only see their poverty and they only see the unfulfilled promises.
Hey,
Wow.
okay.
Oh, man,
Have a lovely
you end on a
weekend. And
profound
thank you very
note.
much, Alexander Philip on the phone. Have a good day.
Thank you.